The next morning, the train arrived in Northwood. The air that greeted them was cool, but slightly warmer and more humid than the coast. A familiar mix of damp earth and green grass. Just taking one deep breath felt like being welcomed back into the town's embrace, instantly calming the hearts of students returning from afar. I'm home. Dragging his suitcase, Leo stood at the station exit, looking around at the bustling crowd. The familiar, boisterous chatter of a local dialect filled the air, and a warmth bloomed in his chest, a mix of nostalgia and emotion. He'd never truly felt this way in his past life, but since his rebirth, he'd grown to cherish his hometown more and more. This time, going off to college hundreds of miles away and returning after half a year, it felt like a lifetime of things had happened. There had been thrilling dangers, brilliant successes, and sweet moments of bliss. But returning home, he found that Northwood seemed unchanged, a calm and quiet anchor in the southernmost part of the state. It was still the same place he'd always known. Leo smiled. This is nice. Suddenly, a voice roared from behind him. Hey, what's the kid up front staring at? You're blocking the way. Move it, move it. Leo turned to realize he was standing directly in the exit path, holding up a crowd of people. A middle-aged man was shouting at the top of his lungs, and a chorus of agreement immediately rose from the crowd. Yeah, kid, stop hogging the damn doorway. Did college make you stupid? Don't you know how to walk? Leo quickly snapped out of it, grabbed his suitcase, and shuffled sheepishly to the side. He watched as the triumphant crowd of locals streamed past him like a conquering army, a dark cloud forming over his head. Never mind, I take it all back. Northwood was still the same damn Northwood, and the locals were as charming as ever. He hadn't walked far from the station when he spotted two familiar figures standing by the side of the road. It was his parents. Robert and Susan Wallace were bundled up in down jackets and gloves, shivering slightly in the winter wind, but they were still on their tiptoes, craning their necks and anxiously scanning the station exit. Leo's eyes warmed at the sight. His heart swelling, he quickened his pace. Mom, Dad. His parents spotted him, and their faces lit up as they hurried over. Leo was ready to pull them into a big, warm hug, but just as he opened his arms, his mother, Susan, stopped short. Her eyes darted past him, searching for someone behind him before finally landing back on her son. Where's Claire? She asked, a confused look on her face. Her first question was about her goddaughter. The warm, heartfelt reunion with her actual son was apparently off the table. Leo awkwardly lowered his arms and scratched his head. Oh, she had some family stuff to take care of back on the coast, he explained. She'll be back in a few days. I just came back early. Disappointment washed over his mother's face. Oh, is that so? She then shot her son a disapproving look. Then why didn't you stay with my daughter and travel back with her? What was the point of coming back alone? His father, standing beside her, nodded in solemn agreement, his gaze accusatory. Your mother is right. Leo was speechless. Mom, is there any chance you remember I'm your son, too? Susan was still muttering with concern. Is it safe for that girl to travel all this way back by herself? She glared at her son again, her irritation growing. You brat. Did you leave all your gentlemanly manners at college? You're just like your father. She turned and stomped off, though not without grabbing a small bag from his luggage cart. Robert froze. Why am I catching strays? He shot his son a resentful look. See what you did? You come home and immediately get your father yelled at. Were they even teaching you at Berkeley? Certainly not anything good. He then hurried after his wife. Honey, wait for me. Don't be mad. I barely know the kid. I'm not like him at all. In his haste to appease his wife, he didn't even bother to help with the luggage, leaving Leo standing alone on the sidewalk. A giant question mark slowly formed above his head. Are these really my parents? Are we sure we don't need a paternity test? His mother truly did miss Claire dearly and had been eagerly waiting for her son to bring his goddaughter home. All she got was her own bratty son, and the disappointment was palpable. By the time the three of them reached their apartment building, Susan was still muttering about having to call Claire later. As they were about to get on the elevator, a neighbor came out of her apartment. She had moved in over the past 6 months and didn't recognize Leo. She greeted his parents with a warm smile, then looked at Leo standing behind them with surprise. Hey, Susan, she said. Didn't you say you were going to the station to pick up your daughter? She gestured toward Leo. How'd you come back with a boy? Robert chuckled good-naturedly. Right, this is our son. Susan glanced at Leo and pursed her lips. He's a cousin. The neighbor was completely baffled. Oh, a cousin's son? Leo, mortified, managed a strained smile and a hello. At the same time, he made a decision. He had originally planned to tell his parents about his relationship with Claire as soon as he got home. Now, it seemed better to wait until Bertha Sue arrived. If they found out their goddaughter had become their actual daughter-in-law, his already precarious position in the family would be in even greater jeopardy. A sense of crisis washed over him. Nope, I have to consolidate my position in this household before she gets back. With his new resolve, Leo hurried into the elevator after his parents, his voice suddenly syrupy sweet. Mom, I missed you so much these past 6 months. We have to catch up. What do you want for lunch? I'll cook for you both. The battle for familial affection had officially begun. Despite her complaints, Susan was thrilled to have her son home after half a year. As soon as they got inside, she sat him down on the living room sofa, and the two began to chat. She proudly told him all about her new business venture. The Sweet Return Bakery had been open for over 6 months now and had firmly established itself in Northwood. It was past its initial 2-month revenue peak, but was doing steady business. Leo had been worried that his mother would be exhausted from running the bakery, but seeing her face glowing with passion and ambition as she talked about her work, he couldn't help but smile. He decided against his original plan to tell her to slow down. Compared to the listless, unhappy housewife she had become in his previous life after being laid off from the old factory, the woman before him now seemed 10 years younger, radiating vitality. Seeing her like this brought him a deep sense of satisfaction. In this new life, helping his parents find happiness felt like a greater achievement than any of his own accomplishments. With that thought, Leo felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He playfully nudged his mother. All right then, you keep it up, Mom. I'll just wait to be the son of a rich family and live off you. His mother rolled her eyes at him. Don't even think about it. You're not getting out of your responsibilities that easily. You're in college to study hard and get a good job. The money I'm making is a safety net for you, not an excuse to slack off. His father, who was passing by with a plate of fruit, nodded emphatically. Exactly. You want to live off your mother? Get in line. Your old man hasn't even had a turn yet. He then scurried over to his wife, offering her the plate with a fawning smile. Honey, have a pear. I just sliced it. Watching his parents' public display of affection, Leo couldn't help but roll his eyes. Fine, don't let me. Mom won't let me live off her, but I know someone who will. At lunch, Susan was still drilling her son. I'm not kidding, Leo. You can't just coast through college. If you don't find a good job and make something of yourself, how do you expect to marry Scylla? She caught herself just in time. His father reacted instantly with a series of loud coughs. Ahem, ahem. Susan recovered seamlessly, her expression unchanged. Ah, what I mean is if you don't amount to anything, you'll be completely overshadowed by Claire. Your father and I will just have to go around telling everyone we only had a daughter. No son. Leo looked up from his plate, utterly bewildered. Is this some new kind of motivational speech? After lunch, Leo volunteered to clear the table and do the dishes, which earned him looks of deep approval from his parents. Going to college had made their son so much more thoughtful. Such an excellent son. They wondered which family's daughter would be lucky enough to have him. Wait a minute. Don't we have a goddaughter? What a coincidence. The old couple exchanged a look, sharing a silent, sinister laugh before retreating to their room with satisfied smiles. Time to call Claire. After finishing in the kitchen, Leo headed to his own room. As he passed his parents' bedroom, he could faintly hear them on the phone. Shaking his head, he walked into his room, flopped on his bed, and pulled out his phone to call his girlfriend and let her know he'd arrived safely. The line was busy. A few moments later, Claire called him back. I was just on the phone with our mom, she said casually, the words flowing as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Just that one phrase, our mom, was enough to send Leo's heart soaring. Listen to that. Our MOM. People without girlfriends will never know this feeling. Snapping back to reality, he remembered his mission. By the way, did you tell them about us? I haven't said anything yet. Claire seemed to shake her head on the other end. No, I think it's better if we tell them together, in person, when I get back. Make it official. Her tone suddenly shifted, becoming soft and delicate. Leo. He was instantly on high alert. That tone of voice meant Bertha, Sue, was up to no good. What? Her voice grew even softer, almost timid. Once we tell them, our relationship will be officially confirmed. From now on, you have to treat me well, and you can't bully me. Leo was stunned. A tiny, cartoon version of himself appeared in his mind with a giant question mark over its head. Bertha Sue, do you hear yourself? Well, have I ever had the guts to bully you? For the past 6 months, who's the one who's been teased and tormented to death? You're turning this completely around, he protested into the phone, righteously defending his honor. But the girl on the other end just pouted, her tone shifting again, this time laced with a threat. I don't care. If you make me unhappy, I'll tell Mom and Dad on you. Leo laughed. Go ahead. They're my parents. You think they'll believe your wild stories. He trailed off as the morning's events, from the train station to the cousin incident, flashed through his mind. He suddenly felt a tear roll down his cheek. They absolutely would believe her. That cunning fox, Bertha Sue, had already won over his parents completely. You vixen. Is it too late for me to go back to being single? A light laugh came from the other end of the line, the Ice Queen's cool demeanor completely gone, replaced by the seductive charm of a nine-tailed fox. Regrets? Too late, sweetie. You're my man now, little brother. They chatted and joked for a while longer. Claire mentioned that she had plans that evening to visit some relatives with her father. Leo's interest was piqued. A big, powerful family? He wondered if it was like the novels, with arranged marriages, poor boys marrying into wealth only to be looked down on by the extended family, and all the other classic drama. You're overthinking it, Claire said calmly. My relatives are all very reasonable and easy to talk to, just like my dad. Leo felt a little relieved, but he asked one more question out of curiosity. And what if they're not reasonable? There was a brief pause on the other end. Then her voice came back, sounding perfectly casual. They will be. Leo blinked. Why'd I just feel a chill down my spine? Back in Northwood, Leo spent the afternoon cleaning his room. He came across a loose-fitting white t-shirt that looked familiar. He remembered it was from last summer, during a heavy downpour, when Claire had come to his house for the first time. Soaked to the bone, she had borrowed it from him. An image flashed in his mind. The girl unconsciously pulling the hem of the shirt tight, revealing the breathtaking curves of her figure. He looked down at the t-shirt in his hands, glanced around, then peered toward the door. Cautiously, he lowered his head and sniffed it. He wasn't sure if it was just his imagination, but he could almost smell the faint, sweet scent of her skin. He snapped back to his senses, tossing the shirt onto the bed and shaking his head vigorously. Whoa, what the hell? I'm acting like a total creep. Leo, you're a decent person. After a stern self-lecture, he composed himself and went back to cleaning. While organizing his bookshelf, he found a row of old notebooks. He pulled one out and flipped through it. They were his diaries, filled with his adolescent thoughts and feelings from elementary school all the way through high school. Reading them now made his face burn with embarrassment. So cringy. It's a miracle Bertha Sue didn't find these last time. If she saw this stuff, I'd die of social anxiety on the spot. He felt a wave of relief, then looked at the diaries with a sense of nostalgia. In his past life, he had actually enjoyed writing. He'd kept a journal from elementary school through his first 2 years of college. It wasn't until his junior year, when internships and then a full-time job consumed his life, that he'd stopped. Back then, writing was a way to vent his frustrations. This life, of course, was different. A smile played on his lips. I have a girlfriend now, who has time to write in a diary. Life was full and happy. He had a sweet-smelling girlfriend to hold and soft lips to kiss. Even when they were apart, he could listen to her singing. He remembered the night before on the sleeper train, huddled under the covers, listening to the shy yet enchanting moans coming from her end of the phone. The memory alone was almost enough to give him a nosebleed. Bertha Sue's voice is absolutely lethal. That evening, Leo got a call from Kevin Zhao. He and Tessa had gotten out for winter break a few days early and were already back in town. I knew the class president wasn't back yet, Kevin said over the phone. As your brother, I couldn't let you be all alone and miserable. My girlfriend and I are sacrificing our date night just to have you third wheel with us. He sounded like the most righteous, considerate best friend in the world. The moment he hung up, however, Kevin's eyes lit up with excitement as he turned to Tessa. Babe, it's on. Leo's eating with us tonight. While the class president is away, we must get our revenge. All that PDA they rubbed in our faces. Tonight, we're shoving it right back at him. Meanwhile, Leo hung up, changed his clothes, and got ready to head out. On his way out the door, he told his parents he was meeting Kevin for dinner. They knew Kevin well and readily agreed. Just before he left, however, his mother remembered something. All right, she said, clear your schedule for tomorrow night. I'm having a reunion with my old colleagues from the factory. Everyone's bringing their kids, a lot of whom are your old childhood friends. You should come, too. It'll be a good chance to catch up. Leo nodded absent-mindedly and headed out the door. He met Kevin and Tessa at the familiar park road at the foot of Beacon Hill Park, right in front of Pop's Fry Shack. Tessa went to order while Leo and Kevin grabbed a table. Kevin promptly brought over a few beers and they clink bottles. While Tessa was still gone, he launched into a full-on bragging session. Dude, you have no idea. My girlfriend and I have gotten so much closer lately. She's super clingy now. Can't even eat a meal without me. And look at this. He proudly displayed a necklace. She got me this matching couple's necklace last week when we went shopping. You two have one of these. Leo looked at his smug, beaming friend. We have a vibrating bed. Kevin froze. A what? The single sentence was a critical hit. It took him a second to process what a vibrating bed was used for, but when he did, his eyes turned green with envy. Just then, Tessa returned to the table. Kevin looked at her with pleading eyes. Babe, when can we get a vibrating bed? Tessa smacked him on the back of the head. You look like a vibrating bed. Soon, the fried food arrived, and the three of them ate, drank, and laughed, the atmosphere warm and nostalgic, just like the summer after graduation. The only thing missing was a certain girl. When is Claire coming back? Tessa asked. Leo put down his beer. I'm not sure exactly. Soon, I think. Probably in the next day or two. By now, Kevin had already downed 2 beers. Undeterred, he ordered a bottle of cheap vodka, and after 2 shots, was already getting dizzy. Hearing his girlfriend and best friend talk about the class president, he was overcome with emotion. Man, he slurred sadly. Last summer, it was the 4 of us, inseparable. Now we're all off at college and only see each other on breaks. The more he talked, the sadder he got. He raised his glass to the sky in a fit of drunken despair. Oh, cruel fate. Why do you have to tear the 4 of us apart? Leo glanced at his suddenly dramatic best friend, then looked at Tessa. How long has he been like this? Tessa's face was a mask of indifference. I don't know. The doctor said it's terminal. Their mockery didn't faze the inebriated Kevin, whose longing for the class president had reached its peak. On the outskirts of the city, at West Mountain Hospital, Wyatt Way walked out of a private VIP suite, a look of exhaustion on his face. But more than tired, he looked utterly disheartened. He had just visited his grandfather, intending to stay a while, but his parents and other family elders had dragged him into a conference room next door for another round of earnest, pleading lectures. The conversation had revolved around the same old keywords: family interests, arranged marriage, lifelong duty. Thinking back on it, a cynical smile touched Wyatt's lips. Down the hallway, a nondescript, square-faced, middle-aged man walked toward him. Young master, he said, his voice respectful and his expression placid, but a hint of concern flickered in his eyes. Wyatt looked at the man and shook his head with a faint smile. It's nothing, Mr. Chun. I'm used to it. His tone was calm. After all, it was the same every time he came home. His family, including his own parents, was consumed by greed and power struggles. They claimed it was all for the good of the family. Yet with his grandfather lying on his deathbed, few of them were willing to step inside his room to offer comfort. Such are the ways of a great family. What a fine family the Weiss were. Mr. Chun hesitated for a moment before speaking in a low, careful voice. Mr. and Mrs. Wei, they only want what's best for you. Wyatt gave a non-committal nod, a corner of his mouth twitching. Right, they all want what's best for me. He turned to look out the hallway window at the dimming sky and suddenly laughed. After all, they're the product of an arranged marriage themselves. Their own marriage is a complete mess, a loveless partnership bound by interests, yet they have to pretend to be a doting couple. So when it comes to me, their son, they're terrified I'll stray from the correct path they walked. As he spoke, a smile played on his lips, but his eyes were cold as ice. The man beside him remained silent. The hallway was quiet, save for the howling winter wind outside. Snowflakes danced in the darkening sky. The tall young man stood by the window, his posture exuding a cold, desolate air, a stark contrast to the friendly, outgoing person Leo had met at the train station just days before. It was as if this was his true nature. Seeing the young man he had watched grow up looking so defeated, Mr. Chun felt a pang of sympathy. So, what are your plans now? Wyatt stretched lazily, his voice casual. I don't know. To protect the family's interests, to keep my grandfather from worrying about his descendants from his sickbed. Maybe the only option is to obediently marry into the Sterling family. Then, his tone shifted, and his face crumpled into a miserable expression. But what if that woman beats me to death? That girl has serious training, you know. She wouldn't hesitate to beat up her childhood friend. The desolate atmosphere shattered instantly. And she has that ridiculous bodyguard with her. Wyatt paused and turned to the middle-aged man beside him. Mr. Chun, could you take him? The camera of the mind now zooms in on the man called Mr. Chun. He appeared ordinary, about 5'9", with an unremarkable face. But beneath his placid expression was a stance as straight and steady as a spear. An aura of disciplined, lethal intensity emanated from him, and a sharp glint flashed in his eyes, enough to put even the most ruthless figures in the city's underworld on high alert. At his young master's question, Mr. Chun paused. He recalled the man who had been a legend in the Northern Military District years ago, and a flicker of fighting spirit ignited in his eyes. He answered solemnly. We faced each other a few times in the national military competitions. It was always a toss-up. He paused again, speaking of his greatest rival with unreserved respect. That man is the definition of unshakable. When it comes to mental fortitude, no one can surpass him. At the Sterling estate on the coast, the very same man praised for his unshakable mental fortitude was currently having a minor internal earthquake. This is terrifying. He was witnessing his young boss confront the entire Sterling clan, a gathering of dozens of people, head-on. At the family dinner, the elders had just started pushing for the marriage between the Sterling heiress and the Way family's eldest grandson. Suddenly, a call came through to Claire's phone. The family couldn't hear what was being said on the other end, but they could clearly hear the girl's affectionate tone and the unbelievably intimate words she spoke. Most damningly, just before hanging up, she had leaned in and, without any hesitation, kissed her phone. The sound nearly made the entire Sterling family's heads explode. They couldn't believe their eyes and ears. When they recovered, the living room erupted. The family was in an uproar, the elders sputtering with rage. Then the girl lifted her cool gaze and swept it across the room. My personal life, she said coldly, is none of your business. The room descended into chaos. But before they could erupt again, she spoke first, her voice calm and steady as she opened fire. If I recall correctly, Uncle, you're a deputy director in the marketing division at Sterling Holdings? The last 2 quarters of your department's financials are still showing a $4 million deficit, aren't they? The man she addressed went pale. Before he could stammer out a defense, she had already moved on. And second uncle, you seem to be enjoying your position as head of logistics at the subsidiary, aren't you? Using half a year's budget to support your 3 mistresses must be quite the lifestyle. Her second uncle nearly leaped out of his chair. You're lying. I didn't. Don't listen to her. When the girl spoke again, her cool gaze sweeping over the room, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. Not a single person dared to utter a word. She had single-handedly silenced the entire Sterling family. Standing to the side, Mr. Joe felt a thrill of excitement run through him, goosebumps rising on his arms. My boss is incredible. Even Charles Sterling was moved, watching his daughter with a mixture of shock, pride, and delight. He had assumed he would have to step in and clean up the mess. Who would have thought that his daughter could handle it all on her own, perhaps even more effectively than he could have? That's my girl. The chairman felt a surge of fatherly pride. But the next second, he remembered that all of this was for some punk kid, and he gritted his teeth. I need to have another talk with my little brother. Dislocating just 2 of that kid's arms isn't enough. Achoo. Back in Northwood, Leo sneezed for no reason and rubbed his nose. Who's talking about me now? From his phone, Claire's concerned voice came through. What's wrong? Did you catch a cold? No, Leo said. Feels like someone's got it out for me. After dinner with Kevin and Tessa at Pop's Fry Shack, he had come home, showered, and was now lying in bed. He had just texted Claire to see if her family gathering was over, and she had called him right back. They had only been talking for a few minutes when he started sneezing uncontrollably. It's probably my big brother again, Leo concluded with a sigh. His daughter's been stolen, so he's in a bad mood. He's been calling me to complain every day. Poor guy. Changing the subject, he asked about her evening. How did it go with the relatives? Everything okay? She replied, her tone light and casual. It was fine. The relatives were very obedient. Is that really the word you use to describe relatives? Leo wondered. They chatted on, Leo telling her about his dinner with Kevin and Tessa, complaining about how Kevin couldn't handle his liquor, but kept challenging the cheap vodka. Tessa has it rough. Having to take care of that clown, he commented. That's just how they show their affection, Claire said with a laugh. After a pause, her voice came through again, slow and deliberate. If he got drunk, I'd take care of you two. Leo was starting to feel touched when she added, a hint of mischief in her voice, and then I'd pose you in 100 different positions. Do whatever I wanted with you. Huh, Bertha Sue, what kind of weird stuff are you talking about? The aloof ice queen of Northwood High, the untouchable goddess of Berkeley. If her legion of admirers heard her saying such brazen things, their worlds would shatter. What's wrong with that? Claire said innocently. A boyfriend gets drunk, his girlfriend gets to play with him a little. It's perfectly reasonable. She picked up the black charcoal head doll she was hugging in her bed. I'm playing with Leo Hammer Wallace right now. Leo instantly understood. He glanced at the pink teddy bear on his own bed and retorted, well, I can play with Bertha Sue too. A small smile played on her lips. If I'm happy, I'll give it a kiss. I can kiss mine too, he shot back, not to be outdone. And if I'm unhappy, I'll step on it. I can. Wait, what? His heart lurched. Why are you rewarding a doll? You vixen, if you're going to do that, do it to me. The couple continued their playful bickering, a meaningless conversation to any outsider, but a sweet little game for them. Only those who weren't single could truly understand the joy in it. An hour flew by. Leo wasn't sure if other couples were like this, but for him and Claire, who had only been dating for a month, time seemed to disappear when they were on the phone. They never ran out of things to say. Even the most mundane details of their day were fascinating to the other. This, he supposed, was what it meant to be a couple, to care about every little thing, to not want to miss a single detail of each other's lives. In their past life, their paths had diverged completely after their final exams. In this one, neither was willing to let a single moment slip away. He casually asked again about her family gathering. She just laughed and glossed over it, not wanting to worry him or put any pressure on him. But then she paused, as if a thought had occurred to her. Leo, yeah. What if someone objects to us being together? Then I'll punch them, he answered without a second thought. We're a perfect match. What right does any random monster have to object? She couldn't help but laugh. Then she pressed on, a playful curiosity in her voice. What if? What if all the monsters in the whole world object? The whole world? Leo was stunned. Did we break some kind of celestial law? Why would the opposition be so dramatic? But she was insistent, her usual cool demeanor replaced by a cute, pestering tone. Just answer the question. What if the whole world objects? As a loyal Power Rangers fan, Leo muttered, sounds like we're the monsters in that scenario. Two kaiju getting cornered by the Megazord. He then declared righteously, then I'd run. Claire fell silent. Leo, she snapped, a dangerous edge to her voice. What? He said, catching on. Of course I'd run with you. If the enemy is too strong, we can't win. Are we supposed to stick around and die? We'll escape from Northwood, hide out at the beach house for a while. If that doesn't work, we'll go to the old chapel on Serenity Peak and see if God can take on the Power Rangers. If God's no help, we keep running. We can't go to Japan. That's their home base. We'll find some deserted place abroad and hide. We should probably start training for long-distance running. Stamina is key when you're on the run. I hear girls have better endurance, so you'll have to drag me when I get tired. When longing is measured by time, every second apart feels like an eternity for a young couple in love. Claire had originally planned to stay on the coast for a few more days to see other relatives, but after the showdown at the Sterling estate, she had single-handedly eviscerated the opposition. She had no interest in seeing the rest of them. Of course, after news of that night's events got out, it was questionable whether any of her other relatives, especially those with guilty consciences, would even dare to see her. But beyond the family drama, the most important factor was that after that night, her longing for a certain someone in Northwood had grown like a wildfire across a dry plain. His silly, rambling escape plan over the phone had touched the softest part of her heart. She no longer wanted to stay. She just wanted to be by his side as soon as possible. That night, Claire texted Mr. Joe and asked him to book a ticket on the earliest train back to Northwood for the next day. The next morning, Charles Sterling learned of his daughter's decision, although reluctant to see her go. As the chairman of Sterling Holdings and the head of the Sterling family, he was swamped with work as the end of the year approached and didn't have much time to spend with her anyway. So he agreed. Besides, he had his own calculations. He was too busy to be with her, and if that annoying punk showed up again while she was here, it would be a problem. It was better to let her go back to Northwood. He refused to believe the kid would follow her all the way there. Downstairs, the black Maybach, driven by the former Special Forces operative, pulled up in front of them. It was time for farewells. The chairman looked at his precious daughter, his heart aching with reluctance. He reminded her to call and text often. It would be even better if her text could exceed 4 words next time. He also mentioned his own work schedule. Don't worry, Daddy will definitely try to come back to Northwood for the new year to celebrate with you, he promised. Claire replied. Her gaze unintentionally drifted to her father's temples, and she noticed for the first time that his hair was already streaked with gray. A pang of emotion hit her. She looked at him, her voice softening slightly. Take care of yourself. Don't work yourself to death. Charles froze, looking at his daughter in disbelief and delight. Claire, in the next second, she had reverted to her cool, indifferent self. You're a busy man, Mr. Chairman. Who knows how many years it'll be before you have time to see your daughter again. The words made Charles break into a cold sweat. He practically swore an oath. No, I promise from now on, I'll balance work and life. My precious daughter will always be my top priority. Claire gave a non-committal nod at her old man's dramatic promises, then turned and got into the back of the Maybach. Charles diligently loaded her luggage into the trunk. Mister, Joe, his most trusted subordinate, or rather, his greatest threat, got out of the driver's seat to help. As they loaded the bags, Charles was still basking in the glow of his daughter's rare show of concern. He couldn't stop smiling. He looked at his right-hand man with pure joy. Joe, you were right. The girl. She really does care about her old father. Mister. Joe was confused. Charles was in high spirits. You did a good job with that logbook. You're getting a raise. Mister. Joe was flabbergasted. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I'm getting a raise for this. The chairman wasn't finished. He looked at his subordinate with growing affection and clapped him on the shoulder. And for this trip, we'll have the Maybach ship back. You go with Claire to Northwood. Now that she's back in her hometown, that punk won't be able to follow her. You'll have nothing to do. Go back and take a good long break. Give yourself a vacation. Mister. Joe's jaw dropped. A paid vacation? The former Special Forces operative felt a twinge of guilt. Mr. Sterling, perhaps I should stay and continue to document things for you. His dutiful attitude moved Charles even more. Excellent, he exclaimed. This is why I have such good judgment. Having a subordinate like you is a blessing. You're too kind, sir, Mr. Joe mumbled. Evening arrived. In Northwood, Susan Wallace, already dressed and ready by the door, called into the house impatiently. Hurry up. We're going to be late for dinner. Leo emerged from his room, wrapping a scarf around his neck. Coming. Tonight was his mom's reunion with her old colleagues from the factory. Many of his childhood friends would be there. Since his rebirth, his memories of them had faded, but like his mom said, it wouldn't hurt to catch up. Before he left, he got a text from Claire asking about his plans for the evening. He replied, telling her about the dinner, and then added, What are you up to today? Her reply came back instantly. 2 simple words. Thinking of you. Leo's face flushed. He quickly hid his phone, glancing around to make sure his mom hadn't seen. He let out a breath of relief. That vixen. She's too good at this. Hundreds of miles north of Northwood, a train sped through the night, its wheels clattering against the tracks as it headed south. Inside one of the cars, Claire put her phone away and gazed out at the passing darkness. She imagined the silly boy's flustered, blushing face when he read her text and couldn't help but smile. I wonder how he'll react when I show up in front of him later. Will he be completely shocked? A look of joyful anticipation spread across her face. Across from her, a certain former Special Forces operative had accidentally seen the text message his young boss had sent. The man, who had seen it all, managed to keep his composure this time. He calmly lowered his head, took out his notebook, and began to write. Miss will be arriving in Northwood shortly. It was the familiar Skyview Pavilion, the same place where they had held their graduation dinner last year. Leo followed his mother through the lobby to the private room reserved for the factory reunion. When they pushed the door open, they saw 2 large tables inside, mostly empty as the other guests hadn't arrived yet. But Leo's eyes immediately locked onto a familiar figure at the table on the right. Leo. Kevin Zhao waved frantically. Over here. Yes, Kevin was here too. His mother had also worked at the factory and was an old colleague of Susan's. The 2 boys had known each other since they were kids, but had only become best friends after being in the same class in high school. Susan smiled when she saw him. Oh, Kevin's here. Where's your mother? Kevin greeted her familiarly. Aunt Susan. My mom and my girlfriend are outside ordering food. They'll be right in. He then shot Leo a triumphant look. Tessa's here too. Susan blinked. Gee, girlfriend. Just then, the door opened again, and Kevin's mother, Mrs. Ren, walked in with Tessa Yuan. Mrs. Ren had her arm linked affectionately through Tessa's, and the 2 were laughing and chatting like old friends. Oh, Susan, you're here. Mrs. Ren said, her face lighting up. She then gestured to Tessa. Tessa, say hello to Aunt Susan. Tessa politely greeted her, then turned her head and gave Leo a slight nod. Susan, still a bit dazed, nodded back. She looked at Tessa, then at the grinning Kevin, and finally back at her old colleague. Run, she said hesitantly. This was a question Mrs. Ren had been waiting for. Her face beamed with pride. This is Kevin's girlfriend, and our future daughter-in-law. They were high school classmates, you know. Oh, that means she was classmates with Leo, too. The 3 of them all know each other. Susan was dumbfounded. Future daughter-in-law? She looked at her old colleague and the beautiful young girl, who already seemed to have a perfect mother-in-law/daughter-in-law relationship. Then she looked at Kevin. Finally, she turned to her own useless son, her eyes burning with disappointment. The look screamed 4 words. Look at him. Leo, who had promised Claire he would wait to tell them the truth, could only manage a strained smile. Ah, the weather is nice today. Seeing Leo's awkwardness, Kevin and Tessa exchange a look. The tiny, cartoon versions of themselves in their minds were high-fiving ecstatically. Nice one, babe. You too. With Claire gone, they had finally gotten their revenge for all the PDA they had been forced to endure. Sweet, sweet victory. Soon, the other guests began to arrive. They were all old colleagues from the factory, and they greeted each other warmly. Hey, Big Chomp. Oldly, you put on some weight. Mrs. Ren, you're still as beautiful as ever. Old Zhao is a lucky man, huh? The adults sat at one table, and the kids at another. While the adults reminisced loudly, the atmosphere at the kids' table was a bit more reserved and awkward. After all, many of them hadn't seen each other in years. This is weird, Tessa whispered to Kevin. Well, a lot of these folks left the factory a long time ago, Kevin explained. Some, like Leo's mom, started their own businesses. Others moved to different cities. So, most of us at this table haven't seen each other in at least 3 to 5 years. We've all grown up now, and we're all shy and awkward like me, so it's natural to be a little socially anxious. He had barely finished his sentence when he stood up, glass in hand, his face flushed and beaming, the very picture of social anxiety. Brothers and sisters, long time no see. You all still remember me, right? Kevin Zhao. Oh, how do you know I have a girlfriend? Come on, I'll drink to that. Ha ha ha. Everyone at the table stared at him. Leo stared at him. Tessa stared at him. Leo leaned over to Tessa. Is your boyfriend always this brave? Tessa looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Don't ask me. I don't know him. Having a clown like Kevin at the table, however, was an excellent icebreaker. The former playmates were all around the same age, between 16 and 20, and they had a shared history. After a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere livened up considerably. Just then, footsteps approached the door. Both tables turned to look as the door opened, and 2 more families walked in. The adults' table erupted in greetings. Hey, old Zheng, and the beautiful Mrs. Wang, come sit. One family consisted of a mother and son, the other a couple with their daughter. After the adults had exchanged pleasantries, their attention turned to the 2 young people. Mrs. Wang, is this your son? Someone asked. He's quite handsome. The woman, Brenda Wang, smiled modestly, but couldn't hide her pride. Yes, this is my son, Scott. Say hello to your aunts and uncles. The young man, who looked to be a college freshman, had fair skin and decent features, but carried himself with an air of arrogance. He nodded politely to the adults. After a round of compliments, the adults turned to the other family, their eyes landing on the daughter. Old Zheng, is this your girl? My, what a beauty! The man, Mr. Zheng, had been a workshop supervisor at the factory. Hearing his daughter praised, his face glowed with pride. Oh, she's still just a little girl, he said with a chuckle. At the Skyview Pavilion, the food began to arrive. At the adults' table, the old factory colleagues, whose bonds ran deep, opened several bottles of wine and reminisced, the atmosphere warm and lively. At the kids' table, the relationships weren't quite as strong, but they were all of a similar age and had common interests. With Kevin acting as the life of the party, the mood was just as festive. After a few drinks, some of the boys started stealing glances at Vivian Zheng. She was, without a doubt, the most stunning girl at the table. They quickly calculated that she would easily be the most popular girl in any of their classes. Soon, one of them mustered the courage to stand up and propose a toast to her. Vivian was gracious, smiling as she raised her glass and returned the toast. Her easygoing manner emboldened the other boys, who began to eagerly recount their childhood memories with her. Vivian was definitely the prettiest girl in our group back at the factory, right? My parents always said how beautiful you were. I remember we played duck, goose, and I was on your team. I even brought you cake for your birthday once. Another boy immediately jumped in. You brought her cake? So did I. Yeah. Vivian was the factory princess back then. Everyone wanted to play with her. The boys tripped over each other, each trying to prove he had been closer to their beautiful childhood friend. Tessa glanced at her own boyfriend. Kevin's face was a mask of righteous innocence. Don't look at me, babe. I'm not like them. I never got the chance to. Ow. I mean, I never even wanted to play with her. Wincing as Tessa twisted his ear, Kevin suddenly remembered something. But he turned to Leo. Weren't you? Leo, who had been focused on his food, looked up blankly. Huh? What about me? The others at the table looked over, and someone had a flash of recognition. Oh, right. Leo had a crush on Vivian back then, didn't he? He was always trying to get her attention. The table erupted in good-natured laughter. Leo was still confused. Did I? 2 lifetimes was a long time. He vaguely remembered playing with a girl named Vivian, but that was it. Good Lord, was I really a simp my whole past life? Was it in my DNA from the start? Hearing the teasing, Vivian didn't seem to mind. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at Leo, a smile playing on her lips. I remember too. For my birthday, Leo gave me a special gift. This caused another stir. Whoa, we all gave you gifts, but you only remember Leo's? Someone's playing favorites. Vivian just smiled, not denying it. She looked at the handsome boy across from her, who now had a relaxed, confident air about him, so different from the shy, quiet boy she remembered. Seeing him again after so long, she felt a slight flutter in her heart. Recalling the past gave her a small sense of pride, and she thought it would be fun to tease him a little. Someone asked, "So what was the gift? What did Leo give you that you'd remember it for so long?" Vivian smiled sweetly, looking at Leo with a playful glint in her eye. "Why don't we let him tell us himself?" Leo froze. A tiny, cartoon version of Leo was having a meltdown, a giant question mark spinning above his head. "I gave her something? I have absolutely no memory of this." But the whole table was now looking at him expectantly. Not want to be a spoilsport. He racked his brain. Was it a box of baby's breath? Vivian blinked. Baby's breath? No. Leo scratched his head awkwardly. Oh, my mistake. Wait, I think I gave that to Sarah Lynn in high school. He tried again. Oh, a little dress. Vivian's smile stiffened. No, the story wasn't going as she'd planned. Wasn't this boy supposed to have been trailing after her like a puppy? How could her little follower have forgotten the birthday gift he gave her? Kevin looked at his best friend with a strange expression and whispered, "Dude, I think the dress was for Sarah Lynn, too." Leo was getting more embarrassed by the second. Was it? I forgot. He desperately tried again. Chocolate. No, a pencil case. That was also for Sarah Lynn. A scarf. He was basically just listing every possible gift he could think of, and every single one was shot down. The atmosphere at the table grew thick with awkwardness. Tessa and Kevin, sitting next to him, were so embarrassed they could barely look up. Kevin nudged him under the table. "Dude, why is your brain full of Sarah Lynn?" he hissed. "How should I know?" Leo hissed back, feeling desperate. That girl had demanded a dozen gifts every single birthday. His memory was now just a catalog of things he'd bought for her. Damn you, Sarah Lynn. Finally, Vivian couldn't take it anymore. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself to remain calm and gave him the answer. "You gave me a small crystal duck." Leo blinked, then looked puzzled. "Wasn't that what I gave to Sarah Lynn?" With that one sentence, the former factory princess, Vivian Jung, almost flipped the table in rage. "IT was for me. My, who the hell is Sarah Lynn?" The commotion at the kids' table caught the attention of the adults. They glanced over and chuckled. "It's so good to see the kids are still so close. We should do this more often." Hearing this, Brenda Wong pursed her lips. "Northwood is still so small town. This is supposed to be the best restaurant? It can't even compare to a random place in Portland. You all should come visit me next time. I have no desire to come back here." Several of the former factory employees at the table had moved to other cities. Brenda had married a man from Portland and settled there. Now, returning to Northwood, she looked down on everything. Kevin's mother, Mrs. Wren, was slightly annoyed. "What's wrong with Northwood?" "I think it's great." Brenda was dismissive. "What's so great about it?" "The food, the clothes, it's all so dated. I couldn't even find anything decent to wear at the mall." She glanced at Mrs. Wren and Susan. "Run, Susan, where did you two get those outfits? Are they 10 years old? Can't find anything better in Northwood." "Huh? I'll send you a couple of things from Portland next time, so you can at least wear something with a bit of class." Her tone dripped with superiority. It was a thinly veiled insult disguised as a generous offer. Back at the factory, she and Susan had never gotten along. Now that she considered herself a sophisticated city dweller, she wasn't going to miss a chance to show off. Susan didn't hold back, rolling her eyes. "No, thanks. I look good in anything." Unlike some people, who couldn't look classy no matter what they wear. Brenda's eyes widened. "Who are you talking about?" "Whoever the shoe fits," Susan retorted. Seeing a fight about to break out, the other colleagues quickly intervened. All right, no fighting. It's a reunion. Let's all be happy. Portland is nice, but Northwood isn't bad either. I heard a new high-end bakery opened recently. It's supposed to be even better than the ones in the big cities." Several people nodded in agreement, praising the Sweet Return Bakery. Brenda latched onto the topic. "Oh, Sweet Return? I've been there. You can tell from the decor and the products that it's not something a small town like Northwood could produce. I was chatting with the manager the other day, and she told me the owner is a real visionary. She built the whole business from scratch." She looked at Susan. "Susan, I hear you started a business too. You should take some notes. The woman who owns that bakery, now she's someone with real vision and skill." She delivered the line with an air of condescending authority. But many of the locals at the table were looking at her with strange expressions. Brenda noticed their odd reactions. What? Am I wrong? The owner of Sweet Return is clearly a genius. Susan, who had been fuming moments ago, was suddenly calm. You're not wrong, she said, but I don't think I can learn from her. Brenda raised an eyebrow. Oh, and why not? You think you're better than her? The more Brenda talked, the calmer Susan became, her expression almost humble. Oh no, that's not what I meant at all. She kicked her friend Mrs. Wren under the table. Wren, it's your time to shine. Mrs. Wren instantly understood, a sly smile spreading across her face. Because the owner of the Sweet Return bakery you're talking about is our Susan. The words hit Brenda like a slap in the face. She was stunned, her mind reeling. Why, you're the owner. The other colleagues who were already in on the secret just shook their heads and smiled. The few who hadn't known were shocked. Susan, is that true? That's amazing. Susan rose slightly from her seat, nodding graciously to the left and right, her voice modest. Just a small business, nothing to brag about. Inside, however, she was ecstatic. Middle-aged, bossy lady CEO. Hell yeah. This feels good. The meal continued. At the kids' table, several of the young people were called over by their parents to make toasts and be introduced. Brenda, still smarting from her earlier defeat, seized the opportunity. She called her son over and proudly presented him to the table. My son took a gap year. He's a freshman now. He got into a good school last year, but wasn't satisfied. The boy has ambition. He reapplied and got into a top business school this year. The table erupted in praise. Scott, her son, tried to look humble, but couldn't hide his smugness, his eyes darting toward Vivian Zhang. Brenda, satisfied with the reaction, shot a challenging look at Susan. Susan, your son's in college too, right? She remembered Susan's son had been a mediocre student. Susan just nodded modestly. Yes. My son isn't that ambitious. He's not the brightest, so he only got into an average school. Then, her voice suddenly boomed across the room. You brat, get over here. Leo, confused but obedient, came over with his glass. Susan slapped him hard on the back, her face glowing with pride. Tell them, what pathetic school did you get into? Leo nearly stumbled, shooting his mother a dark look. Why does she sound like she's sicking a dog on someone? Still, he answered politely. Aunts and uncles, I'm at Berkeley. A stunned silence fell over the table, followed by a wave of gasps. Berkeley? That's a top-tier school. Practically Ivy League. Now it was the kids' table's turn to be shocked. Vivian's eyes widened in disbelief, a strange light shining within them. Susan was radiant, beaming as she waved her hands dismissively, a grin splitting her face. Oh, all these rankings. I don't understand any of it. At the Skyview Pavilion, as the girls' questioning echoed through the room, Tessa and Kevin felt a chill run down their spines. It's over. It's all over. In that instant, the young couple had already planned Leo's funeral. Babe, should we offer a few sticks of incense for Leo next spring? Let's burn some paper money. He was a decent guy, after all. They whispered to each other, having already pronounced his death sentence. As high school classmates and close friends, they knew Claire's personality all too well. Cool, proud, aloof. No, those were just labels. As Leo's girlfriend, her primary trait could be summed up in one word: territorial. They had seen how mercilessly she dealt with Sarah Lynn back in high school. And at college, she had stormed the stage during the freshman welcome gala with a bouquet of flowers to declare her sovereignty. Then, at the New Year's gala, she had performed a duet with him, a second, decisive blow to any would-be rivals. If she couldn't protect her food, she was the type of person who wouldn't hesitate to destroy the food itself. As for any rival who dared to snatch it, their fate would be even worse. Sarah Lynn and Lily Lou were prime examples. So, as they whispered, Tessa and Kevin kept a close watch on the scene unfolding at the other table. Kevin scanned the room nervously, half expecting the bodyguard, known as Earthquake Uncle, to materialize and, with a subtle gesture from his boss, dispose of the beautiful girl named Lana. Tessa's senses were on high alert, ready for her best friend to produce a 40-meter-long sword from thin air and personally deal with the cheating couple. But what happened next was completely unexpected. At the other table, Claire's gaze fell on the arm Leo and the beautiful, dark-haired girl were linking. Her eyes slowly traveled up, swept past Leo's face, and finally settled on the girl named Lana. The moment she saw the girl's face, a flicker of surprise crossed her own, followed by a flash of understanding. An intriguing light danced in her eyes. Then, her expression returned to one of calm composure. She smiled again and finished her sentence. And, she said sweetly, I miss my little Leo, too. As she spoke, she reached out and affectionately took Leo's other arm. The room was plunged into an even deeper silence. Everyone stared, dumbfounded, at the scene before them. Two breathtakingly beautiful girls, one on each side of Leo, holding his arms in a perfectly natural and friendly manner. The picture was so harmonious, it looked like a family of three. Wait, a family of three? A tidal wave of shock crashed through everyone's minds. What is going on? At the next table, Tessa and Kevin were also stunned. What's happening? Claire isn't mad? Babe, am I hallucinating? Kevin whispered, his eyes wide. What is she doing? Tessa, trying to remain calm, offered a theory. It must be a slow, painful death. She's sharpening the knife. Just wait for it. At the adults' table, the colleagues couldn't hold back any longer. One of them, dumbfounded, asked Susan, Susan, these two are... Susan herself had been caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of the two girls. But as she took in the sight of her goddaughter and this other girl clinging to her son's arms, a realization dawned, and she started to smile. This is why daughters are the best. Just when she was feeling cornered, they had arrived like cavalry to save the day. Instantly, Susan sat up straight, her voice filled with pride. Oh, they're both my daughters. You heard them. The girls missed their mom, and they missed their little Leo, too. She deliberately emphasized the name Leo, shooting a triumphant, defiant look at Brenda Wong and her son. The colleagues were stunned. Daughters. They had known each other for decades. They all knew Susan only had one son. If she'd had a daughter later, she wouldn't be the same age as Leo. So they couldn't be her biological daughters. But if they weren't, and yet they were calling her mom so affectionately, there was only one other possibility. There is another kind of relationship, where you also call her mom. Brenda and her son arrived at the same conclusion. They were utterly shocked. Scott, in particular, stared at the two beautiful girls flanking Leo, completely frozen, a stampede of 1,000 angry alpacas rampaging through his mind. No, how is this fair? The crisis was temporarily averted. The adults at the table forced a few awkward laughs. Well, I never knew you had two such beautiful daughters, Susan. Come on, let's eat. Have another drink. They tried to continue their conversations, but their eyes kept darting toward the other table. Meanwhile, the two beautiful girls smiled politely at the adults, and then, still holding onto a bewildered and innocent Leo, escorted him back to the kids' table like a prisoner. As soon as they sat down, everyone around them, including Tessa and Kevin, scrambled to move away, clearing a large space around the trio. Some were intimidated by the girls' powerful aura. A certain couple was just afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. Leo was now sandwiched between the two girls. He looked from side to side at his arms, still held in a tight grip, and was about to speak. But before he could finish, someone else at the table spoke up. It was Vivian Zhang. She had followed them back to the table and was sitting across from them, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. She looked at the two girls on either side of Leo. Either one of them, in terms of both looks and presence, made her feel an overwhelming sense of defeat. Inside the private room, the banquet continued. At the next table, the adults couldn't stop stealing glances at the kids' table, their eyes drawn to the two beautiful young women sitting on either side of a certain young man. Their feelings were a complicated mix. Just a moment ago, they thought Susan's kid was just a bookworm, too focused on his grades to have time for a girlfriend. But as it turned out, he brought two, both of whom were impossibly stunning. They even outshone Vivian Zhang, who was considered a catch herself. Immediately, the old colleagues looked at Susan Wallace with an even deeper envy, getting up one after another to toast her, almost as if they wanted to get her drunk to vent their own frustrations. Susan, however, accepted every toast, her mood soaring as she clinked glasses with her friends. When she sat back down, her old friend Mrs. Ren, Kevin Zhao's mother, tugged her arm and whispered, "Hey, give me the scoop. What's the real situation over there? Are they both your future daughters-in-law?" The question made Susan pause. She glanced over at the two girls at the other table, a complex wave of emotion washing over her. How could that be? I wish, she thought. One of them was still a long shot. The other was impossible from the very beginning. Of course, that flicker of regret was just a passing thought. On the surface, she remained beaming. Who cares if it's real or not? Tonight, Susan Wallace was going to soak up all the glory. She was going to enjoy this moment to the fullest. Over at the kids' table, everyone was trying their best to act normal. They ate, they drank, they clinked glasses. But the corners of their eyes kept drifting toward Leo and the two girls flanking him. At the center of all the attention, however, the atmosphere seemed surprisingly harmonious. The beautiful girl with long, dark hair, whose name was Anna, had been momentarily stunned by Claire's quick response earlier. Now, having collected herself, she was back to her usual self. A gentle smile played on her lips as she picked up a piece of chicken with her chopsticks and placed it in Leo's bowl. "Here, Leo, your favorite chicken wings. Have some." As she did, she shot a seemingly casual glance at Claire, a single eyebrow arched in a subtle challenge. Nearby, Tessie Yuan and Kevin Zhao felt their scalps tingle with a familiar sense of dread. It's happening. It's happening again. A direct, in-your-face provocation. That woman even dared to raise an eyebrow. Does she have a death wish? However, the plot took another unexpected turn. Faced with Anna's move, Claire, sitting on Leo's other side, seemed completely unfazed. No, it was more than that. She actually offered Anna a slight smile and a nod of acknowledgement. "He does love those. That's very thoughtful of you, Anna." Tessa and Kevin. Question mark. What was happening? Tessa quickly recovered, her mind racing. She leaned over and whispered her analysis to her boyfriend. This move is a strategic retreat to advance. She's showing the grace and tolerance of the official girlfriend, making it impossible for her opponent to land a punch. Kevin nodded repeatedly, completely in awe of his girlfriend's insight. "Babe, you're a genius." Anna, too, was taken aback by Claire's attitude. It felt like punching a pillow, all force, no impact. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a competitive spark igniting within her. This opponent is pretty good. Instantly, she smiled brightly and replied, "You're welcome." Then, she continued to affectionately place food in Leo's bowl. "Here, Leo, try this. And this. Have a taste of this, too." She carried on as if she knew his tastes inside and out, their intimacy resembling that of a long-term couple. However, the food in Leo's bowl was piling up into a small mountain, yet Claire showed not a single sign of anger or jealousy. More than that, she was now resting her chin on her hand, watching Anna's performance with rapt attention, as if she were an engrossed spectator at a show. Anna was practically breaking a sweat from all the food serving. Unwilling to give up, she turned to check her opponent's reaction one more time. But suddenly, she saw a delicate, slender hand extend across the table. It held a pair of chopsticks gripping a lamb chop, which was then placed gracefully into her own bowl. Anna looked up, startled. Claire was smiling at her. "Don't just serve everyone else," Claire said softly. "Your favorite lamb chops. You should have some too." Anna, question mark. Kevin and Tessa, question mark. The couple was dumbfounded again. They ducked their heads under the table for another emergency strategy session. "Babe, what's going on now? What's the class president's play here?" Tessa looked equally baffled, hesitating before she spoke. "This move is she trying to win over the enemy commander?" As the person in question, Anna was completely bewildered herself. "Wait, I'm over here trying to make this girl jealous by piling food onto Leo's plate, and she just ignores him and gives me food instead? What does that even mean? And how did she know I like lamb chops?" A storm of thoughts raged in her mind. Anna took a deep breath. "Calm down. Don't fall for her psychological warfare." The young Miss of the family put on her smile again and moved to place more food in Leo's bowl. "Leo, you have to try this." This time, Leo, sandwiched between the two girls, finally snapped. "Stop it. Are you really trying to fatten me up like a pig?" He turned to Anna, his face full of suspicion. "And you, Annie Cakes, what's gotten into you today? Calling me so sweetly. What are you plotting this time?" "Huh." Everyone at the table froze. Anna's eyelid twitched, a vein throbbing at her temple. "Leo, pighead, Wallace, you dare call me that one more time?" Leo stood his ground, righteous and defiant. "Annie Cakes, I'll say it. So what? Ow, wow." The next second, he sucked in a sharp breath, clutching his foot and grimacing in pain. You pulled that trick again." The beautiful Anna gracefully retracted the long leg that had just stomped on his foot and snorted coldly. "You deserved it." The others were just confused by the interaction, unable to figure out what was going on. Kevin couldn't help but ask, "Leo, man, what's the deal?" Leo was still rubbing his foot and hissing in pain. After a moment, he finally recovered enough to look up and explain to Kevin, Tessa, and the others. When she was a kid, she was chubby, and her face was as round as a steamed bun. "So I call her Annie Sid? Ow, wow." Anna, expressionless, retracted her foot again. That's not what he was asking. Leo clutched his foot again, wincing. "Oh, this woman is my aunt's daughter. She used to stay at my house all the time and insisted on making my parents her godparents. So, relationship-wise, she's actually my cousin." The banquet in the private room was still in full swing. For the group at the kids' table, while they were envious of Leo's left and right embrace of two top-tier beauties, they quickly rationalized that girls of that caliber were out of their league anyway. Once their mindsets were adjusted, they settled into the role of appreciative spectators. Looking around at the other girls at the table, their happiness index shot up. The other girls from her childhood group were all attractive in the upper middle range. Kevin's girlfriend, Tessa Yuan, had been a beauty in her own right back in high school, and since starting college and dressing up, her gentle and elegant demeanor had only added to her charm. Vivian Zheng, the former little princess of the old factory community, was even a touch more spunky and adorable than Tessa. And that was without even mentioning the two goddess-level beauties, Claire Sterling and Anna, holding court. This table, it was a veritable feast for the eyes. Even though none of them are ours, just getting an eyeful is pretty damn good. The guys at the table thought with cheerful optimism. Meanwhile, Vivian Zheng had also recovered from her brief moment of feeling overshadowed. She looked at Anna and Claire, sitting on either side of Leo. Though she admitted to herself that she couldn't quite match their looks or aura, her competitive spirit flared up. She had to try. She might not be as stunning as those two, but she was far from plain. Besides, she had an ace up her sleeve. She and Leo had grown up together at the old factory. That shared history, those fond childhood memories, were something no one else could compete with. With that thought, Vivian put on a radiant smile. She proactively raised her glass to Leo, striking up a conversation about all the fun things they used to do as kids. Leo, do you remember? After school, we'd all go to the factory and sit on the stairs by the workshop to do our homework. I even shared my snacks with you. Leo paused. Did you? The memory was too distant. He couldn't quite recall. Right away, another one of their friends eagerly raised his hand, cutting in. Hey, Leo's memory is terrible. I remember. Vivian, you shared snacks with me too. Vivian shot the scene stealer a sideways glance. You're mistaken. I never shared any with you. I only ever gave them to Leo. The friend was stunned. Huh. Kevin, sitting next to him, sympathetically patted his shoulder. Just let go, man. This is a high-stakes game. Don't get involved, or else Batman will come for you. Vivian raised her eyes, her gaze sweeping over Anna and Claire with a challenging, provocative glint in her smile. Unfortunately for her, she was up against opponents in a much higher league. Upon hearing Vivian's words, Anna, sitting to Leo's right, just smiled calmly. Her tone was light and dismissive. Well, I never shared any snacks with Leo, pighead. But we did share a birthday cake together, just the two of us, every year. Her words landed with a thud. Everyone was stunned. Damn, celebrating birthdays together, just the two of them sharing a cake? That was on a whole other level than sharing a bag of chips. Vivian was speechless. Anna's smile was effervescent. But as she spoke, she cast another seemingly accidental glance toward the girl on Leo's left. At that same moment, Claire Sterling, seated to Leo's left, seemed utterly oblivious to the undercurrents of competition at the table. She was contentedly savoring the food that Leo had just diligently placed in her bowl. As if sensing everyone's gaze turning to her, the campus belle of Berkeley finally looked up and offered a faint, serene smile. Oh, that's all very nice of you both. Not like me. The only thing I've ever shared with him was a kiss. The air suddenly froze. The silence was so absolute it was terrifying. Vivian, Anna, all the other friends at the table, Tessa and Kevin. The couple stared at each other, their pupils trembling so violently they were practically blurring. The royal flush. Holy shit, is this the power of the class president? This is a god-tier power level. Absolutely terrifying. That one casual, nonchalant sentence had nearly ended the entire competition. Vivian had to take several deep breaths to compose herself, the competitive fire in her eyes reigniting. I can't give up. One more round. Vivian looked at Leo again, her smile returning. Speaking of birthdays, that little crystal duck you gave me was pretty expensive, wasn't it? We were only about 10 back then. That gift must have cost you your allowance for a long time. Leo looked blank again. Was it? I just remember spending a lot on a gift for Sarah Lynn. A vein throbbed on Vivian's forehead. This has nothing to do with Sarah Lynn. I'm talking about me. Who the hell is Sarah Lynn? Get the hell out here and face me one-on-one. But Anna and Claire, flanking Leo, remained composed. Anna chimed in with a sweet smile. What a coincidence. That certain pighead gave me birthday presents too. Except I just took his 3 years' worth of saved allowance and went shopping for myself. Vivian's face stiffened. The table erupted in another wave of shocked murmurs. Tessa and Kevin were deeply impressed. Whoa, another masterstroke. Finally, Claire spoke, her expression serene, a faint smile on her lips. That's all very sweet. Unfortunately, Leo and I haven't celebrated a birthday together yet. He only ever gave me a remote-controlled, vibrating bed. The air froze for a second time. The temperature seemed to plummet to absolute zero, and everyone felt as if they'd been flash-frozen into statues. This time, even Anna's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. Kevin and Tessa nearly fell to their knees. The finisher, an absolute brutal finisher. The Berkeley Belle is taking no prisoners tonight. Vivian took a few more deep breaths, forced a smile, and played her final trump card. Leo, do you remember? We used to play tag at the factory, girls chased the boys, and I actually tackled you once. She paused, a blush creeping on her cheeks. That time, you accidentally. Your hand touched me. Her words trailed off, leaving a rich, suggestive space for everyone's imagination. This time, even Anna and Claire were momentarily stunned, their expressions freezing over. And at that precise moment, as if blessed by the god of memory, a certain clueless handsome boy, who had been oblivious until now, suddenly slapped his forehead in a flash of realization. At the dinner table, two great beauties sat on either side of him, sandwiching him in the middle. The pressure was immense. Claire's expression was cool and collected as she offered a simple comment. Someone seems to have a pretty good memory. Anna's smiling eyes glinted with a dangerous light. Well, you did get a handful. He'd have to remember that vividly, wouldn't he? On the surface, they were both acting casual, even smiling. But in the next second, the soft flesh on either side of Leo's waist was simultaneously pinched by two slender hands, a silent, vicious twist. Leo sucked in a sharp breath on the spot. Ow, wow. Grimacing, he had to turn to his girlfriend and force a smile. I was just kidding. I'd completely forgotten. Then he turned to glare at Anna on his other side. What are you pinching me for? Anna looked perfectly innocent. I'm helping my sister-in-law. You don't have a problem with that, do you, sister-in-law? Claire nodded slightly. No problem at all. Perfectly reasonable. Somehow, the two women had inexplicably formed a united front. Across the table, Vivian Zheng, seeing that her trump card had worked, felt her fighting spirit surge. Inspiration struck, and memories from their childhood began to flood her mind, which she listed off one by one. This made things miserable for a certain handsome boy. Even though he'd snapped back to his senses and was now firmly and righteously denying everything or insisting with grave dignity. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I have no memory of that. I don't remember. The next moment, Anna would look at Claire and raise an eyebrow. Sister-in-law, he's lying. Claire would nod calmly. I can tell. And with that, the soft flesh on his waist would once again be gently pinched and twisted by two delicate fingers. By the end of dinner, it was unclear if Vivian, who had been rattling off childhood stories a mile a minute, had won. But it was certain that a certain handsome boy had lost, miserably. Finally, Vivian ran out of examples. She racked her brain, unwilling to give up, trying to recall more. Even Kevin, sitting nearby, couldn't take it anymore. He tried to reason with her. Vivian, please, no more examples. Any more, and someone's going to die. The reminder seemed to snap everyone, including Vivian, back to reality. They all looked at the person in question. His face was pale, his expression stiff, and he was covered in a cold sweat. He didn't dare move, the smile plastered on his face looking more like he was about to cry. The group of friends started whispering amongst themselves. Is Leo okay? Hard to say. He looks a little bit dead. They finally made it through the grueling dinner. At the next table, the adults, still in high spirits from drinking and chatting, decided to find a tea house or a mahjong parlor for second round. They couldn't be bothered with their kids. They just pulled out some cash, tossed it to their respective children, and told them to go find their own fun. Susan Wallace, who hadn't overheard the explosive conversation at the kids' table, came over. First, she pulled her two goddaughters into a warm, affectionate hug, chatting away. Then, she turned to her son, her eyebrows immediately shooting up as she laid down the law. Take Claire and Anna out, and you make sure you take good care of them. You hear me? If a single hair on either of their heads is out of place, I'll have your head. Leo silently turned to look at the two beauties, who were now listening with great interest, starting to playfully twirl their own hair while grinning at him mischievously. A shiver of fear ran down his spine. He swallowed hard. I'll do my best. The two groups, adults and kids, parted ways at the Skyview Pavilion, each heading to their next destination. The young friends gathered outside the restaurant and, after a brief discussion, unanimously decided to go sing karaoke at the Vault, Northwood's oldest KTV bar. As they were hailing cabs by the roadside, the others had already paired off and left. Only Leo, Claire, Anna, Kevin, and Tessa remained, A total of 5 people, a bit of squeeze for one car. Leo took charge. All right, Kev, you and Tessa take one cab. The 3 of us will take another. Before he could finish, Claire's cool, pleasant voice cut in. No need. They all turned to look at her. The girl had already linked her arm through Anna's in a natural, intimate gesture. She raised an eyebrow at Leo. You 3 take a cab. My sister-in-law and I will take one. The statement nearly knocked the other 4 speechless. Kevin and Tessa just stared at each other, not daring to speak, communicating frantically with their eyes. Leo was also a bit stunned. He felt there was something subtle about this arrangement. Subtly dangerous. Just the 2 of you? Claire's tone was calm and casual. Yes, just the 2 of us. 2 sisters-in-law sharing a cab. Perfectly reasonable, right? She turned to Anna with a slight smile. What do you say? Anna had been a bit surprised herself, but meeting Claire's gaze, her eyes narrowed slightly before she, too, smiled. Sure, sounds reasonable to me. And so, Leo, Kevin, and Tessa got into the first car. On the way to the vault, Kevin leaned forward conspiratorially from the back seat toward Leo in the front. Leo, man, I have a bad feeling about your cousin and the class president. Something big is about to go down. You think those 2 are going to fight? Leo didn't seem too concerned. It's fine. They're both reasonable people. Reasonable? Kevin was dumbfounded, 1,000 question marks popping up in his head. Are you sure? Maybe you should think about that again. Leo thought for a moment. He thought about his girlfriend, then he thought about Anna, and suddenly, he wasn't so sure either. They, probably, maybe, they won't, right? Tessa then leaned forward, asking curiously, didn't you say Anna was your cousin? I talked to her for a bit earlier. She said she's studying at East Coast Financial University and is already a junior. Leo explained casually, oh, she's only a few months younger than me, but she was a genius in school. Skipped 2 grades. Kevin and Tessa were enlightened, both letting out gasps of admiration. Then Kevin asked, so what's the deal with the godmother thing? Leo chuckled. She used to stay at my place all the time, probably spent more time there than at her own house. And she was super attached to my parents. My family basically saw her as a second daughter. He sighed dramatically, which is why my status in the family was basically rock bottom when I was a kid. The memories were too painful to recall. In the back seat, Kevin was practically green with envy. Damn, Leo, you have no idea how good you have it. A cousin that beautiful. You should have introduced me sooner. I let her come live at my house. Time rewinds to the previous life. Back then, though Claire Sterling and Anna had known each other and worked side by side for years, their partnership was seamless and close. It was strictly professional. In their private lives, they rarely spoke of their families or personal matters. Neither of them could have imagined that the turning point in their relationship would come at a funeral. After that funeral, Claire had resolutely dropped most of her work and accompanied her benefactor's parents back to their hometown. There, in her benefactor's bedroom, she stumbled upon a high school senior class photo from Northwood High. She recognized him. It wasn't just a feeling of familiarity. They had truly known each other. In the days that followed, she immersed herself in his journals. Meanwhile, Anna, as both his cousin and his parents' goddaughter, frequently took time off from her busy corporate life to return to Northwood. She would help care for the elderly couple and keep Claire company. And so, the 2 women, already familiar colleagues, one a subordinate and one a superior, truly began to grow closer. During the day, they would sit in his bedroom, reading his journals together. They would burst into laughter at his silly, dramatic teenage writing, laughing until tears streamed down their faces. Sometimes, late at night, they would sit across from each other, drinking wine and sharing stories about him. One night, tipsy from the wine, Anna couldn't help but sigh. She marveled at how fate could be so coincidental, so random, to have brought them together, their lives so tightly interwoven by a man who was so profoundly important to both of them. They had become as close as real sisters, like the most perfect, harmonious sisters-in-law. You 2 would have been the most perfect couple, Anna had said, her gaze fixed on Claire, her tone solemn and sincere as the alcohol took hold. You would have been the only sister-in-law I would have ever accepted. Claire just smiled faintly. You can think of me as your sister-in-law now. Anna raised her glass again, downing the red wine in one gulp. When she set the glass down, her body was already swaying. She fought to keep her balance, her eyes hazy, but she still shook her head with stubborn conviction. No, the way things are now is good. But if you were still here, if you 2 had really met and gotten together, that would have been better. Claire fell silent. She, too, raised her glass and drained it. The alcohol cast a haze over her eyes, making them misty and distant. Yes, if only. That would have been so much better. That night, They lay side by side on the bed in his room. After the lights were turned off, the room fell into a quiet darkness. And in that darkness, she heard her friend, her sister-in-law, whisper, "Claire, do you think a person can get a second chance at life?" She was silent. After a long moment, she let out a soft sigh. "I don't know." Time returns to the present. Northwood, inside the lobby of the Vault KTV. The young woman looked up at the back of her friend, her sister-in-law from a past life, a few steps ahead. Then she turned her head slightly to see a certain idiot hurrying to catch up. Claire Sterling smiled, a soft, warm light in her eyes. Now, she had an answer. A second chance at life? Yes, there is. The group of friends booked a private room at the front desk. Once upstairs, one of them grabbed a menu and flagged down a waiter, expertly ordering drinks. At the Skyview Pavilion, in front of the adults, they hadn't dared to let loose. Now, free from supervision, it was time to drink and have fun to their heart's content. Someone else had already made a beeline for the karaoke machine to start queuing up songs. Soon, drinks and fruit platters arrived. One by one, friends took to the stage, grabbing the microphone to show off their singing skills. Vivian Jung, the former princess of the factory community, sang a rendition of Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten. Released in 2006, the song had become a massive hit in less than 2 years, played constantly on the radio and request shows. Now, hearing Vivian sing it, her solid vocals and sweet tone capturing some of the original artist's magic, she earned a roaring round of applause. Next, surprisingly, was Scott Wong. The same guy who had been strutting around like a proud peacock at the restaurant was now clutching the microphone, belting out "Apologize" by One Republic with such raw, heart-wrenching emotion. You could tell he'd been dumped at least 100 times. Anna hadn't planned on singing, saying she wasn't interested. But then Claire walked up to the machine and, as if at random, selected Christina Aguilera's Beautiful. The moment the intro began, Anna's face lit up. She shot her hand up, eagerly asking for a mic. "I'll take this one. This one's mine." She took the microphone from Tessa and enthusiastically went up to sing. Claire gracefully returned to her seat beside Leo. Leo looked at his girlfriend, utterly amazed. "How did you know who her favorite singer is?" The girl's expression was calm and nonchalant. A lucky guess. She glanced at the bewildered boy beside her, a small smile playing on her lips. A little telepathy between sisters-in-law. Perfectly reasonable, right? Anna was indeed a die-hard Christina Aguilera fan. With her powerful lungs, she delivered a moving, beautiful rendition of her idol's signature song that captivated the room. When she finished, she was met with another thunderous round of applause. Satisfied, Anna sat back down, just in time to hear Kevin egging on Leo. "Leo, your turn, man. Show us what you've got. It's been too long since we've heard you sing." Anna paused, looking at Leo with suspicion. "You can sing?" She didn't remember him having any such talent as a kid. But Kevin and Tessa were nodding vigorously, testifying on his behalf. "He really can. It's amazing." At the graduation party, he sang one song by the Wallflowers and completely blew the class president away. "Ha ha. Ow wow." Before he could finish, Kevin sucked in a sharp breath, clutching his left foot, his eyes nearly popping out from the pain. Nearby, Claire casually moved her foot away. "Sorry, it's too dark in here, I didn't see it." Then the girl looked up at Kevin, her tone gentle and concerned. "You're not dead, are you?" A shiver went down Kevin's spine. He snapped back to reality and shook his head frantically. "Not dead, not dead." The next second, he even forced a sycophantic smile. "As long as your foot is okay, class president." Ha ha ha. After they had sung their fill in the KTV room, the group decided to start drinking and playing games. At first, the guys were eager and confident, ready to show off their skills in front of the girls. But then, Claire Sterling entered the fray with a calm, composed look. From liar's dice to card games of all sorts, the girl effortlessly crushed every guy at the table, single-handedly destroying their dreams of being gambling gods. Holy crap, they had run into a real-life female card shark. Even Kevin was stunned, leaning over to whisper to Leo, "Man, with the class president's gambling skills, she could easily support the two of you for the rest of your lives." Leo glanced at his best friend. "She could support 10,000 of me right now and not break a sweat." Kevin, suddenly remembering the background of a certain Miss Sterling, Kevin's eyes turned red with envy. Damn it. Damn you rich people. With a cheat code level player like Claire in their midst, all dice and card games were off the table. So, someone suggested, "Hey, why don't we play Truth or Dare?" Everyone quickly agreed. They all gathered in a circle, placing an empty beer bottle in the middle to act as a spinner. Whoever it pointed at had to answer a truth or perform a dare. For the first few rounds, the bottle avoided Leo, Claire, Anna, Kevin, and Tessa. They were happy to just watch the show, and they were treated to some surprising revelations. It turned out their old childhood friends all had some wild stories. Back at the restaurant, in front of their parents, they had all acted like perfect angels. But in private, they were a bunch of wild cards. One had already been in 6 or 7 relationships since starting college. Another was hooking up with a senior. Someone else got a truth. What's the most exciting place you've ever had an encounter? A guy who looked honest and unassuming blushed and replied, "A movie theater." A collective gasp went through the room, followed by looks of deep respect. "Whoa, legend." Kevin immediately turned to his girlfriend with pleading eyes. "Babe, I want to." Tessa, blushing furiously, smacked him on the head. "You want nothing. No, you don't." Even Leo was intrigued. He stealthily glanced at his girlfriend. She noticed his look and raised an eyebrow, a half-smile on her face. "What? You wanted to?" Feeling guilty, Leo immediately put on a righteous act. No, what kind of person do you think I am?" But in his head, a tiny cartoon version of himself was grumbling, "Dude, I'd love to. But Bertha Sue would have to be willing." "A movie theater? Let me try out that friendly vibrating bed first. If we wait any longer, the remote control is going to rust." The game went on for a few more rounds. The empty bottle on the table spun again, slowly coming to a stop. This time, the mouth of the bottle pointed directly at Leo. A joyous cheer erupted from the group. They all looked at him with undisguised schadenfreude. "Finally, it's your turn, you lucky bastard. You get to have a girlfriend on one arm and a cousin on the other, enjoying all the perks. It's only fair you pay a little price." This round was a truth. The group put their heads together, ready to hit him with something big, determined to make him squirm. Finally, Vivian Jung, the factory princess, came up with an idea. She looked at Leo, a bright smile on her face. If Claire and Anna both fell into a river at the same time, Leo, who would you save? The question was met with a chorus of excited cheers. Everyone looked at Vivian with something akin to worship. Great question. A kill shot. At the same moment, Kevin and Tessa, sitting nearby, sucked in a sharp breath, exchanging panicked glances. Holy crap, that's a death sentence of a question. Leo was also dumbfounded. He looked left and right at Claire and Anna. They both seemed a bit taken aback as well. Then they unconsciously sat up a little straighter, their eyes fixed on him with a curious, probing intensity. In that instant, a stampede of 1,000 alpacas thundered through Leo's mind. What the hell is this garbage question? Can you ask something a human being can actually answer? His inner cartoon self was fuming at Vivian. This childhood friend is even worse than Sarah Lynn. Her intentions are pure evil. Forcing himself to calm down, Leo thought long and hard before cautiously proposing. Can we change the people to Power Rangers? If it were Power Rangers, he'd be much more familiar with the scenario. His request was immediately shot down by the group. Hell no. No changes. You have to choose between Miss Sterling and Missin. Leo scratched his head in frustration. They both know how to swim. I'm the one who can't. Why don't you ask which one of them would save me? He was still trying to deflect. But Vivian was sharp and mercilessly blocked his escape route. Let's assume they can't swim. You have to be the one to save them. With the conditions set, Vivian watched Leo's conflicted face, a wave of satisfaction washing over her. She might be number 3, but the 2 ahead of her weren't going to have an easy ride either. Tonight, her principle was simple. Nobody gets out alive. Leo was truly in a bind. Just then, Claire unexpectedly spoke up. He's not answering this one. All eyes turned to her. The girl calmly picked up a bottle of beer. Without looking at Leo, she faced the group and smiled faintly. He forfeits. I'll drink this one for him. The group was stunned for a moment. Then they broke into a chorus of hoots and hollers. Oh, Miss Sterling is so understanding. Leo, you're a lucky man. Just as they thought the tense situation was about to be smoothly resolved, a slender, fair hand suddenly shot out, pressing down lightly but firmly on the mouth of the beer bottle Claire was about to lift. The room fell silent again. Claire paused. She looked up at the person who had stopped her, only to meet Anna's seemingly nonchalant gaze. Anyway, they both have to live. Those words were spoken with a smile. In that moment, no one dared to joke or question the earnest gravity in Leo's voice. Vivian was also stunned. She hadn't expected her mischievous, troublemaking question to be met with such a response. The atmosphere in the room turned suddenly quiet. Fortunately, at times like these, Kevin Zhao could always be counted on. He looked at Leo and exclaimed in awe, "Damn, that's our Leo. Who knew you could find a loophole in a question like that? You're a genius." He even gave Leo a thumbs up. The rest of the group snapped back to reality. laughing and joking along, praising him while also accusing him of being a cunning cheat. The tense atmosphere immediately lightened. Leo grinned. All right. I cheated. I found a loophole. I'll take a penalty shot. With that, he picked up a glass from the table and downed it in one go. The room erupted in cheers again. Only Claire and Anna didn't join the commotion. The two women quietly watched him take his penalty shot. The former's gaze grew softer, a look of I knew it mixed with a faint ache of tenderness. The latter's eyes flashed with a complex mix of emotions, gratitude, struggle, and finally, a slow dawning acceptance. The game continued for a few more rounds. Eventually, they decided it was more fun to just drink, so they abandoned the game and started challenging each other to drinking contests. The girls, swept up in the increasingly lively atmosphere, also drank a fair amount. After another round, Claire smiled, excused herself, and went to the restroom. On her way back, she passed by the vault's outdoor balcony. She happened to see Anna leaning against the railing, seemingly getting some fresh air. Anna heard her footsteps, turned, and upon seeing Claire, raised an eyebrow and beckoned her over. Claire smiled and walked over without hesitation. The two impossibly beautiful young women stood side by side, leaning against the railing, looking out at the glittering night lights of Northwood. The late winter wind was chilly, but Anna seemed not to notice. She turned her head slightly to look at Claire. I was just kidding earlier. Don't take it to heart, she said nonchalantly, referring to the truth or dare incident. Claire nodded with a faint smile. I know. Then, she too looked at Anna, her gaze clear and calm. But Leo wasn't kidding. He cares a lot about me. And he really, truly cares a lot about you too. Anna was taken aback. She looked up and met Claire's serene, clear eyes, which seemed to see right through her. She turned away, a little flustered, and changed the subject. How did you end up falling for that pighead? This time, it was Claire's turn to pause. A montage of countless images flashed through her mind. Finally, she just smiled, her answer light and simple. That's a long story. And it truly was a long story. The intertwined fates of two lifetimes were so tightly woven they could never be separated. They were fused into each other's very being. The countless twists and turns, the epic reversal of space and time. No words, no matter how eloquent, could ever do justice to the sheer weight of that destiny. Anna didn't press. She just pouted slightly. Then she looked back at Claire, tilting her head. A new thought seemed to occur to her. How about this? Name your price. How much would it take for you to leave him? It seemed like a spontaneous joke, but then she added seriously, I'm pretty rich, you know. Claire couldn't help but laugh. Is that so? Unfortunately, I happen to not be in desperate need of money either. Anna seemed unwilling to give up. Don't be so quick to refuse. Why don't you hear my offer first? Claire was composed. You don't have to be in a rush either. Why don't you? Do a quick search for the Sterlings of Sterling Holdings. A question mark appeared over Anna's head. Then, she actually took out her phone and searched it right there. A moment later, she lowered her phone, her face a mask of pure shock as she stared at the girl in front of her. A slight curve formed on Claire's lips. Feeling better now? Anna's shoulders slumped. I've given up all hope. Then, she looked up again, her face a picture of utter bewilderment. A girl like you. What do you see in him? Claire was once again amused by her friend, her sister-in-law, from 2 lifetimes. She countered, You don't think he's good enough for me? Anna was momentarily speechless. After a long pause, she mumbled, That's not it. I think he's good enough for anyone. I just didn't think anyone else would actually think he was good enough, too. With that, Anna fell silent, turning to look out at the distant, glittering lights of Northwood, lost in thought. Claire said no more. She stood beside her, also leaning leisurely against the railing, quietly admiring the night view. After a long while, Anna's voice came again. I don't know why, but I feel this strange connection to you. But that guy Leo, he's an idiot. A very kind idiot. If you're just playing around, please don't hurt him. If you really like him, please treat him well. Her voice was soft, carried away by the winter wind on the KTV balcony. Beside her, the girl smiled. Without turning to look at Anna, her eyes fixed on the distant lights, she spoke as if to her, and as if to herself, in a quiet, calm whisper. Like is too light a word. I owe him more than I can say. I can't pay it back, and I don't intend to. So this life, I'm only living for 2 words. Leo Wallace. Leo, having also left the noisy KTV room to use the restroom, was on his way back when he passed the balcony. He glanced over and saw the 2 girls leaning against the railing. A question mark popped over his head. What are you 2 doing? Trying to turn yourselves into popsicles in the middle of winter? A certain handsome boy seemed to have a magical ability to ruin any atmosphere. At the sound of his voice, Anna and Claire turned. Seeing him standing at the entrance to the balcony, Anna raised an eyebrow, her tone casual. The three on the balcony were, of course, oblivious to the minor incident that had just occurred in the hallway. The brief, confrontational encounter between the former factory princess and the former beauty of Northwood High's Class 7. Sister-in-law and sister-in-law joined forces to tease and torment him one more time. Then, in high spirits, the two women linked arms and headed back to the KTV room, leaving him standing alone in the cold wind, completely bewildered. After a moment, he snapped out of it and hurried after them. As he followed, watching the backs of his girlfriend and his infuriating cousin, he couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. With these two teaming up, why did he have a feeling that the rest of his winter break was going to be inexplicably difficult? Back in the room, they continued to sing, drink, and play games with their friends. Everything was cheerful and normal. Claire was her usual calm and composed self, and Anna had reverted to her smiling, easygoing demeanor. No one could tell anything was amiss. Only Kevin and Tessa eyed the two suspiciously, huddling in a corner to whisper, "Babe, something still feels off." Those two seemed to have suddenly become harmonious. Tessa glanced at Anna and Claire again, watching them laugh and toast each other. The former literature rep of Northwood's Class 10 made her judgment. It's a superficial harmony, masking a murderous intent. They partied at the vault until almost midnight before the group finally, contentedly, called a night. They left the room and gathered downstairs to say their goodbyes, reluctantly promising to get together more often. Scott Wong, who had initially seemed the most aloof, was now quite drunk and holding on to Leo's hand, slurring his words as he pounded his chest. "Next time, you come to the Southwest. My treat." Leo smiled and agreed. They were all childhood friends. The bonds between them weren't so shallow that every encounter had to involve some arrogant, face-slapping villain. With the exception of Sarah Lynn, there was no real reason for it. But still, screw Sarah Lynn. Vivian Zheng also came over to say goodbye. Before she left, the factory princess looked at Leo and smiled. "I go to school in Portland. If you have time, come visit. I'll treat you." Leo was smiling, about to agree, when he suddenly felt two murderous glares slice through the air toward him. He instantly changed his tune without batting an eye. "Oh, we'll see. I probably won't have any free time." Vivian wasn't surprised by his answer. Her gaze swept over Anna and Claire. A flicker of regret showed in her eyes. Then she looked up at Leo and smiled brightly. "Well, see you around then." With that, she turned and got into a taxi. Tessa and Kevin also said their goodbyes and left, leaving just Leo, Claire, and Anna. Anna turned to them and raised an eyebrow. "All right, I'm out of here too." Leo looked at her, smelling the alcohol on her breath, and frowned slightly. "You drank a lot tonight. Let's take you home first." Anna rolled her eyes. "Stop nagging. You're not even that much older than me, acting like you're my big brother. Technically, I'm a junior in college now. You should be calling me senior, you know." She paused, then glanced at Leo and Claire, a sudden smile spreading across her face. "Don't worry, this much alcohol is nothing. I'll go first. Don't want to interrupt your private time." With that, she spun around and walked coolly toward a taxi. Leo watched her leave, still worried, and called out, "Text me when you get there, and come over for dinner sometime. My parents have been asking about you." Anna didn't look back, just raised her arm and waved, signaling that she understood. After watching her taxi disappear into the distance, Leo turned to his girlfriend, a helpless, wry smile on his face. "That girl, I feel like being her brother is going to be a lifetime of worry." Claire smiled and hummed in agreement. Then she looked up at him, a playful glint in her eye. "Don't worry about the future. Right now, you should worry about me." Leo was confused. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish, the girl's hands were already on his shoulders. They slid up around his neck and locked behind his head. Then, she rose onto her tiptoes, her slender, graceful body arching like a drawn bow as she pressed her lips directly onto his. The kiss was sudden, fierce, and passionate. It was a long while before their lips parted. Still holding onto his neck, the girl's cheeks were flushed, her chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Her eyes, shining and sultry, were locked on his. 3 days apart, she murmured, her voice like silk. "We agreed on 5 times a day." Leo, who had just barely recovered from the breathtakingly soft and wonderful sensation, was in no state to argue whether the original agreement was for 3 times a day or 5. "So, that means we're short 14. A smile touched the corners of her lips. "Your math is good. How's your phys ed?" Leo blinked. "Phys ed. Good phys ed meant good stamina." Good stamina meant that for the remaining 14, a certain young lady intended to collect them all, right now, in one go. Before Leo could process this, Claire took a deep breath, and her lips were on his once again. This time, the kiss was even more intense, more passionate, more tangled. Under the soft, yellow glow of the streetlight, their figures seemed to melt into one. Just then, one of their friends, who had forgotten something, returned to the KTV. He saw them by the road and was about to call out happily, "Leo, you guys haven't left yet." The next second, he froze, petrified at the sight of their entwined, passionately kissing figures. His heart suffered 10,000 points of PDA damage. He forgot all about the thing he had left in the room. He turned and walked away silently, his pupils quaking. As he left, he happened to pass a black Mercedes parked by the curb. He glanced at it casually and saw that the driver's side window was open. A steady-looking, middle-aged driver sat behind the wheel. But as his eyes swept over the driver, the friend paused, a little confused. Am I so drunk that I'm hallucinating? That uncle's eyes. Why are they shaking even more than mine? It's like they're vibrating into a blur. 10 minutes later, Leo and Claire got into the car Mr. Joe had brought to pick them up. As they settled into the back seat, both of their expressions were a little unnatural. Only 3 days apart. For a couple in the throes of new love, it was an eternity. When the black Mercedes finally reached its destination, stopping in front of Leo's apartment building, the girl in the back seat was still holding his hand, reluctant to let go. We're here. Leo didn't want to part either. He glanced out the window to confirm. We're here. Claire looked at the former Special Forces soldier in the driver's seat. Mr. Joe, do you always drive this fast? Her tone was light, but clearly tinged with displeasure. Mr. Joe, I'll be more careful next time, miss. Inside his head, a tiny Special Forces soldier was on the verge of a breakdown. This is fast. I already took every back alley and side street I could find. I was driving at the absolute minimum legal speed. Any slower, and I'd get a ticket. And besides, no matter how fast I drive, can it compare to the speed you two are moving at? On the surface, however, the veteran remained calm and composed, even offering a rational explanation. Perhaps I'm not used to this new car. It will be better when we get the Maybach back. The new Mercedes? ? The girl, however, nodded in agreement. Yes, let's have the Maybach shipped back as soon as possible. This one is average. With the car situation settled, the moment of parting had finally arrived. Leo gently squeezed his girlfriend's hand. It's okay, he comforted her. We'll see each other tomorrow. Claire hummed in response, but didn't let go. Her bright, clear eyes were fixed on him, unblinking. Her gaze slowly drifted down from his eyes to his nose and finally settled on his lips. Then she met his eyes again, raising an eyebrow in a silent, suggestive signal. Leo, he got it. But they were in the car, and Mr. Joe was right there in the driver's seat. He shot a frantic look back at her, trying to signal that it wasn't appropriate. But the girl didn't seem to care. She just kept staring at him, a sultry light beginning to dance in her eyes. She even casually ran her tongue over her own lips. The sight nearly made Leo's heart leap out of his throat. Forcing himself to stay calm, he whispered, Mr. Joe is still here. The reminder seemed to finally register. The girl nodded, then casually called out to the front. Mr. Joe, why don't you step out for a bit? Mr. Joe. The veteran snapped to attention, instantly understanding. He scrambled to get out of the car. Yes, of course. I just remembered I have some business to take care of outside. The girl nodded in satisfaction, adding lightly, take your time. No rush. There might be some mosquitoes in the car for a little while. The words short-circuited the veteran's brain. Mosquitoes? He blurted out instinctively. There are no mosquitoes in the car, miss. I checked it myself. It's very clean. The dutiful conscience of the Sterling family's personal driver. Claire glanced at him. I mean the kind of mosquitoes that bite lips. Mr. Joe. On his first night back in Northwood, the veteran, whose pupils had already suffered 2 violent earthquakes, opened the car door and retreated from the battlefield, his heart filled with sorrow. Fine, just take my life, why don't you? Once the driver's side door was closed, Leo glanced out the window, watching Mr. Joe's figure walk away. He breathed a small sigh of relief, feeling a bit awkward. He was just about to turn and tell his girlfriend that they should be nicer to Mr. Joe in the future. He had just turned his head before he could even open his mouth when a fragrant breeze washed over him. The girl lunged forward, her soft lips sealing away the words he was about to say. In the cold winter night of Northwood, in the parking lot below his apartment building, the interior of the black Mercedes was dim, the figures inside barely visible through the windows. The car vibrated slightly, a tremor that perfectly matched the frequency of a certain middle-aged man's trembling eyes, some 20 yards away. Kissed until he was dizzy, he stumbled out of the car. The cold night air on his face finally brought him back to his senses. Seeing Mr. Joe not far away, Leo felt a pang of embarrassment. He subconsciously touched his swollen lips and tried to explain with a calm demeanor. The mosquitoes in the car are pretty vicious. Mr. Joe's mouth twitched. He, too, tried to maintain his composure as he nodded gravely. Reasonable. The two men, one young and one older, looked at each other and exchanged stiff, knowing nods. Then they passed each other by, both breathing a silent sigh of relief. One walked briskly toward his apartment building, his heart replaying the sweet memory. Good mosquitoes. They can bite me a few more times. The other walked with heavy, complicated steps back toward the black Mercedes, a storm raging in his heart. Damn you, Northwood mosquitoes. Back home, he opened the door and walked into the living room. His mother's shoes were by the door. She must have gotten home earlier. Leo glanced at his parents' bedroom. The light was off. They were probably asleep. He tiptoed to his own room, closed the door behind him, and flopped onto his bed. He stared at the ceiling for a while, his mind replaying the intimate, thrilling scenes from a night, making up the full quota of 15 sessions with his girlfriend. It had been breathtaking, epic. The girl who was usually so cool and distant had been transformed by a few days of separation into a passionate, clingy lover. If kissing was already like this, what would happen if they did something more? It would be a scene so intense that even the censors wouldn't dare to allow it. As his mind wandered, a smile spread across his face. Having a girlfriend is the best. I truly hope everyone can have a girlfriend and experience this. In a blink, it was the next morning. After all the drinking last night, Leo slept until nearly 11. He stretched luxuriously as he walked out of his bedroom, only to find his parents in the living room, staring at him. It was the weekend, so his father was off from work. His mother's bakery now had a professional manager, so she no longer needed to be there all the time. Seeing her son finally emerge, Susan Wallace was not pleased. All you do is sleep in. This winter break, you're practically glued to your bed. Not content with that, she shot him another look and muttered under her breath, I wish you'd glue a daughter-in-law to me first. Leo, ? Beside her, his father chimed in righteously. Your mother is right. At lunch, Leo looked at the spread on the table. It was noticeably less impressive than when he had first come home a few days ago. The first day, there had been 6 dishes and a soup. The second day, 5, then 4. She had texted that she would arrive at 2 in the afternoon. She was a full half-hour late. When Leo took the elevator down to meet Claire at the entrance of his building, he was a little confused. What took you so long? The girl's reply was nonchalant. I changed my outfit and put on some simple makeup. It took a little while. It sounded simple. In reality, after texting him that she was coming over to officially meet his parents and reveal their relationship, she had launched into a frantic preparation session at her own home. She had even summoned the housekeeper, Mrs. Foam and Mr. Joe to act as consultants. A simple but refined makeup look had taken a full hour. Then, she had torn through her entire wardrobe, trying on 20 or 30 different outfits in front of a full-length mirror before finally settling on the one she was wearing now. A certain former Special Forces soldier was, at this very moment, still chewing on the end of a pen, trying to figure out how to phrase this in his report to her father. No, not spin it, but record it factually. Now, Claire stood before Leo and prompted him, so what do you think? Leo carefully looked his girlfriend up and down. With light makeup on, she was even more exquisite than her usual barefaced self, so beautiful it made his heart skip a beat. She wore a thoughtfully chosen pale pink dress that was tailored to perfectly accentuate her slender, elegant waist. Over it, she had a cream-colored knit cardigan, the soft texture giving off a warm, approachable vibe that complemented the dress, adding a touch of grace to her gentle beauty. The dress ended tastefully above her knees, revealing a pair of well-proportioned, slender calves. Leo's eyes were fixed on those calves. Aren't you cold, wearing that in the winter? Claire smiled. Silly, I'm wearing stockings. Leo's eyes widened in realization. He looked down again. Stockings are cold, too. They walked into the elevator as they talked. Claire explained casually, they just look thin. They're actually quite thick and warm. He was still skeptical. Really? I don't believe you. Unless you let me feel, he declared righteously. The girl paused, looking at her little boyfriend, a smirk playing on her lips. Sure, getting bold, are we? She showed no shyness at all, proactively extending her leg toward him. Go on. The invitation was direct. Leo. He was completely floored. He had just said it as a joke. Who knew Bertha Sue would actually call his bluff? He had thrown a simple jab, and this girl had countered with an all-out, rule-breaking ultimate move. Seeing his stunned expression, Claire's smile widened. What? Scared? What a joke. What kind of man backs down at a time like this? Leo puffed out his chest. All right, I'm really going for it. Claire raised an eyebrow. Do it. He took a deep breath, feigning composure as he squatted down. Before him were her perfectly shaped calves, wrapped in a thin layer of silk. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. He steeled himself and slowly reached out his hand. The elevator stopped on the 6th floor. The doors suddenly slid open. The neighbor he had met on his first day back in Northwood walked in. Oh, Leo, hi. Leo shot up like a spring, nearly breaking into a cold sweat. Hi, Andy. The neighbor smiled and greeted him. Then her eyes fell on Claire. She was captivated. Whoa, what a beautiful young lady. Then, as if remembering something, she looked at Claire with dawning recognition. You must be Susan's daughter, right? Such a gorgeous girl. No wonder Susan treasures you so much, talks about you all the time. She showered Claire with compliments, and Claire smiled and politely thanked her. Leo felt a little put out. He took Claire's hand and looked at the neighbor, raising an eyebrow. Andy, you got it wrong. This is my girlfriend. The neighbor froze. Gee, girlfriend. Leo nodded, feeling quite proud. That's right. The next second, the neighbor's face was a mask of horror and heartbreak. That's outrageous. How can you do that between a brother and sister? That's illegal. Leo, she really is my girlfriend. My legal girlfriend. The neighbor was furious. Legal my foot. She's your sister. By the time they got out of the elevator and into his apartment, Claire was laughing so hard she could barely stand, her body limp with mirth. A certain handsome boy, his face dark, had no choice but to support his giggling girlfriend to the living room sofa. Even after sitting down, Claire couldn't stop laughing. Leo finally lost his patience, his embarrassment turning to annoyance. Are you done yet? Claire tried to stifle her laughter. Okay, I'll stop. Then she comfortably propped her long legs on the coffee table, crossed them, and looked up at him, lazily commanding, I'm thirsty. Leo, little brother, get your big sister a glass of hot water. Leo. His face dark, he turned and went to the kitchen. A moment later, his voice drifted out. The electric kettle seems to be broken. Hang on, let me see if I can fix it. The girl, lounging on the sofa, replied casually, there should be a spare one in the top cabinet, second shelf. Leo, huh? The sound of rummaging came from the kitchen. A few moments later, a series of giant, almost visible question marks floated out. Wait a minute. Whose house is this? He returned to the living room with a glass of hot water and sat down in front of the sofa, handing it to her. Careful, it's hot. Claire took the glass and gave him a radiant smile. Such a good little brother. Leo. Fine, Bertha Sue, have your fun. Just you wait until I get my chance. I'll make you pay for this. His inner cartoon self fumed, plotting his revenge. Claire took a small sip of water, set the glass down, and looked around. Are Mom and Dad not here? Leo nodded, explaining they didn't know you were coming. One went to the factory, the other to the bakery. They can't sit still. They should be back soon. Claire nodded. Okay. Then, as if a thought occurred to her, she looked at him and raised an eyebrow. So, it's just the two of us here now. A playful smile touched her lips, and she feigned a timid look. A man and a woman, all alone. You're not going to do anything bad to me, are you? Leo, question mark. In the living room, on the sofa, Leo's mother looked at Claire, her tone hesitant and confused. So, you two were just playing around? Claire was now sitting beside Susan, perfectly behaved and incredibly prim, looking a little embarrassed as she lowered her head to apologize. Yes, we were just joking. We're sorry for worrying you, Mom and Dad. Beside them, Leo's father let out a huge sigh of relief, patting his chest. Oh, thank goodness. I was saying, our Leo isn't that much of a scoundrel. Leo nodded frantically. Yeah, I would never do that for real. So, Mom, can you please put the knife down now? Only then did his mother finally lower the kitchen knife slightly, shooting a sideways glance at her son, who was still wiping away a cold sweat. You're lucky you still have some sense. If you really dare to mess with Claire. Swish. A flash of steel. Susan Wallace's hand moved in a blur, and an orange on the coffee table was instantly sliced in half. Though her cooking skills were lacking, her knife skills were maxed out. Leo. After thoroughly threatening her son, Susan turned to Claire, her face instantly transforming into a beaming smile. She took the girl's hand affectionately. Oh, dear. Why didn't you tell us you were coming? What did you get here? I didn't get a chance to talk to you properly at the restaurant yesterday. Now that you're here, we must have a good, long chat. Her attitude did a complete 180. The difference in treatment between her goddaughter and her biological son was like heaven and earth. Leo coughed from the sidelines. Ahem, Mom, we have something to tell you both. His parents paused, looking puzzled. Something? His father eyed him suspiciously. Did you bully Claire again? The keyword, bully, instantly triggered Susan's passive ability. Her hand instinctively reached for the knife on the coffee table. Luckily, Robert was faster, grabbing the knife first. Hold on, let's hear what the kids have to say. Leo looked at his father, his eyes filled with gratitude. Dad, see, that's a real dad. Robert then shot his son a look. You hold on, too. Tell us what's going on first. If I don't like what I hear, your dad also knows his way around a blade. Leo, with his parents watching him like hawks, the pressure was immense. Knowing that dragging it out would only lead to bigger problems, Leo took a deep breath and made his decision. He blurted out, "We're dating." As soon as the words were out, he shot back 3 meters, warily watching his parents' reactions, ready to bolt for the door at the first sign of trouble. Upon hearing his declaration, Robert and Susan froze. The living room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Robert's mouth moved, finally managing to squeeze out half a sentence. D-dating. Susan's gaze fell on Claire, her voice tense and uncertain. Claire, is it true? Claire smiled and nodded. Yes, it's true. The next moment, Robert and Susan looked at each other. Then a joyous, excited cheer erupted from their living room, loud enough to be heard throughout the entire apartment building. Downstairs, in another apartment, the neighbor from before vaguely heard the commotion from above and shook her head with a sigh. Susan must have found out about those 2 kids. With her temper, she's probably beating that son of hers to death. What tragedy. Upstairs on the living room sofa, Susan Wallace was practically glowing, her face alight with pure joy. Good. Excellent. Wonderful. Dating is great. High school desk mates, going to college together, falling in love. It's perfectly reasonable. Wonderful. The string of praises was a testament to her ecstatic mood. Beside her, Robert wasn't much calmer. With no other outlet for his excitement, he started swinging the kitchen knife in a series of flashy, empty air flourishes. Finally, he pointed the blade at his son, his face flushed. Good boy. This college education didn't go to waste. Leo, Dad, can you please put the knife down? The sudden joy was overwhelming. It took his parents a great deal of effort to process it. But Susan was still too excited to sit still. She shot up from the sofa. No, this is too big to not celebrate. We have to do something special today. Robert, let's go grocery shopping. Tonight, we'll have the most lavish feast ever. A grand banquet. Then, she turned and ordered her son. There's still some food in the fridge. You get to it. Start making your mother's signature dishes. She sounded like a master chef directing an apprentice. Leo was bewildered. He cautiously asked, Mom, what are your signature dishes? Susan waved her hand magnanimously. Whatever is most difficult. That's what I'm good at. Make it state banquet level. She glanced at her son. You got a problem with that? As she spoke, her hand was already reaching for the knife again. Leo flinched, shaking his head like a bobblehead. No problem, no problem. I'll get right on it. His mother had made a boast, and it was up to the son to deliver. His parents, high on excitement, went out to the market. At home, Leo tied on an apron and went into the kitchen. He pulled out a pile of ingredients from the fridge, did a quick inventory, formed a rough plan, and got to work. Claire naturally followed him in, her hands behind her back, and kindly asked, Need any help? Leo glanced at his girlfriend. He remembered her culinary masterpiece, the rainbow-hued blackness from their time at the beach house, the single slaughterhouse. He immediately shook his head. Nope. You go rest on the sofa in the living room. I'll call you when it's ready. But Claire wasn't having it. No way. What if Mom and Dad come back and think I'm lazy and just want to eat? Leo chuckled. Don't worry. My mom is just like you. In the Wallace family, the men do the cooking. As he spoke, he was already washing vegetables and cutting meat, his knife skills practiced, and his movements relaxed and confident. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the knife against the cutting board was strangely calming. It was the sound of a home, a warmth unique to a small-town family. Claire leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching him, completely captivated by the sight of him, focused and busy. It was a scene she felt she could watch forever. With every glance, a warm current seemed to flow through her chest. It was so incredibly warm. Her heart was so full of joy, she felt like shouting, like letting the whole world know just how happy she was. Reporting to the big boss via text message tonight was an ordeal that took every last ounce of Mr. Joe's creativity. The former top soldier of the entire military region's war games felt he could switch careers and become a scholar. acing any exam thrown his way. He deployed every rhetorical flourish and innovative term he could invent, practically pulling them out of thin air. On the other end of the line, the chairman of Sterling Holdings was thoroughly baffled, completely taken in by the elaborate report. The one thing Mr. Joe hadn't anticipated was a text from his young master, Leo. It arrived out of nowhere, catching him completely off guard. The Special Forces veteran's brain blue-screened. Just then, the big boss started asking follow-up questions. With no other options, Mr. Joe gritted his teeth and told a single, unvarnished truth. His heart pounded as he waited for the inevitable interrogation. But instead, there was a brief pause on the other end, followed by Charles Sterling's enlightened voice. "Oh, so that's how it is." A moment passed. "It's fine. That's great. It's rare for her to take the initiative to stay over at a friend's house." "Excellent, excellent. It seems Northwood really holds a special place in her heart." Mr. Joe blinked. Question mark. Regaining his composure, the retired Special Forces soldier cautiously tested the waters. You aren't worried?" Mr. Sterling's laugh boomed through the phone. "What's there to worry about? I know a thing or two about Claire's friends in Northwood. Didn't she have a close friend in her class back in high school? What was her name? Tessa Yuan. It's perfectly reasonable for young ladies to get together for a sleepover and share secrets." Mr. Joe let out a sigh of relief, nodding vigorously. Yes, perfectly reasonable, perfectly reasonable." Hearing his trusted subordinate's agreement, Charles Sterling's mood brightened even more. "Don't think of me as so unreasonable. I'm a very open-minded father. As long as she's not spending the night with that punk. If something like that were happening, I swear I'd fly back to Northwood tonight and personally vaporize that kid on the spot." Ha ha ha. Another hearty laugh echoed down the line. Mr. Joe, now sweating profusely, could only stammer, "Yes, of course." In the driver's seat of the newly returned Maybach, greater than over equal to less than over equal to 0, back in Northwood, inside the Wallace family living room. The matter of the family's new daughter-in-law staying the night was settled. But the house only had 2 bedrooms, one for Robert and Susan, and the other for Leo. Susan Wallace, overjoyed at receiving Claire's consent, made an executive decision. Claire will sleep in Leo's room. Leo can take the couch. It was the expected arrangement. Claire hesitated slightly. Is that really okay? It wasn't that she was truly embarrassed. The girl simply didn't want to be separated from her boyfriend. But she couldn't exactly say that in front of his parents. Susan naturally misinterpreted her hesitation and waved her hand dismissively. "It's fine. No need to feel sorry for him. That kid could fall asleep in a ditch. A couch is a luxury. You just worry about yourself, Claire." Before a daughter-in-law, her son held some status in the household. Now that there was a daughter-in-law, what was a son? His continued existence was enough. The domestic doctrine of Susan Wallace. Leo, listening from the side, couldn't help but interject. "What if we just share a room?" The moment the words left his mouth, the living room fell silent. The air temperature seemed to drop as a murderous aura began to rise. His mother slowly turned her head to face her son, her expression blank. "What did you say?" A large kitchen knife had mysteriously materialized in Susan Wallace's hand. Leo stammered, Nothing. I said the couch sounds great." Satisfied, his mother turned back to her daughter-in-law, taking her hand and speaking in a warm, solicitous tone. "It's cold in the winter, so remember to turn on the heat when you sleep. I'll get you an extra thick comforter in a bit. You can see if it's comfortable." On the other side of the room, Robert Wallace pulled his son into a corner, placing a hand on his shoulder for a serious, heartfelt lecture. "At your age, it's normal to have all sorts of thoughts about a girl you like. But you have to remember, son, to like a girl, you must first learn to respect her. Just because you're dating doesn't mean your head should immediately be filled with that stuff. That kind of thing is not something the men of the Wallace family do. You two have a long road ahead of you. There's no need to rush. Take it step by step." The words were spoken with the gravity of a life-altering sermon. Leo cautiously glanced at his father's other hand, which was now skillfully flipping a second kitchen knife through a series of terrifyingly dangerous maneuvers. "I get it. So, Dad, can you maybe put the knife away now?" His father looked down at his left hand, as if just noticing it. "Oh, right. You put the knife down. This was just in case you weren't receptive to my first approach. Your old man knows a few knife tricks. Between the 2 methods, I was bound to get through to you one way or another. Physical persuasion, the child-rearing philosophy of Robert Wallace." And so, the sleeping arrangements for the night were finalized. Susan had already led her daughter-in-law to the bathroom to get her toiletries, remembering to add a final piece of advice on the way. "I'll make sure there's something in the room for self-defense." If that boy dares to sneak in, don't you hold back. Claire could only nod, trying to suppress a smile. She glanced over her shoulder at Leo with a look that said, "Sorry, my hands are tied." Leo, if he wasn't afraid of giving his parents a heart attack, he would have told them right then and there. He and their precious daughter-in-law had already slept in the same bed countless times back on the coast. After washing up, Claire pushed open the bathroom door and came face to face with Leo, who was about to go in and brush his teeth. Their eyes met. He wore a look of utter despair. The girl offered him an apologetic glance. Then her eyes took on a flirtatious glint. She gave him a subtle, silent, blown kiss as a form of consolation. Leo's heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes darted to the end of the hall. His mother was standing at the door of the master bedroom, glaring daggers at him. She pointed to her own eyes, then pointed directly at him. The message was crystal clear. "I'm watching you, Leo." He beat a hasty retreat into the bathroom. Night deepened. The lights in the Wallace house went out, and a quiet peace settled over the darkened living room. Lying on the couch under a thick blanket, it was warm and comfortable enough, but sleep wouldn't come. He tossed and turned, his mind consumed by the thought that just a few feet away, on the other side of a thin wall, lay an impossibly beautiful girl, his girlfriend. A wildfire of longing burned in his chest. Just then, the phone beside him silently lit up. Leo snatched it and looked at the screen. It was a text from Claire. "Awake." The text message jolted Leo wide awake. He immediately typed back, "Yeah, are you kidding me? Who could sleep?" Kicked out of his own room, his own bed, forced to sleep on the living room couch. And to make matters worse, on the other side of the wall, lying in his bed, was his fragrant, soft, gorgeous girlfriend. Just a few days ago, before Claire had returned to Northwood, Leo had slept alone in his house just fine. But now that Bertha Sue was back, right in the next room, sleeping in his bed, it was driving him crazy. Back at the L&S house on the coast, they had often slept together. Although they hadn't done anything, they had grown accustomed to the proximity. Now, that habit was reawakened, and Leo felt an incessant, teasing itch in his heart. He had a girlfriend, and he still had to sleep on the couch alone. What kind of nonsense was that? He wasn't some single loser. Soon, another text arrived. "Are my parents asleep?" Leo glanced toward the master bedroom, straining his ears. Hearing no sound, he quickly typed. This time, her reply was slower. A moment later, the screen lit up with a single word, "Come." It was like a royal decree. Leo threw off the covers and leaped from the couch, revitalized and ready for battle. He instantly shifted into stealth mode, moving like a cat burglar through the darkness, not making a single sound as he crept toward his bedroom door. He reached the door, held his breath, and slowly pressed down on the handle. It didn't budge. The door was locked. "Leo." He pulled out his phone and fired off a series of question marks to the girl on the other side of the door. Silence from within. Then, another text came through. "Beg me." It was accompanied by a smug, smiling emoji. Leo gritted his teeth in frustration. He was in too deep to back out now. Swallowing his pride, he typed, "Please." The reply came, "Call me my dearest wife and master, and you owe me another 100 favors." Leo's blood boiled. "Damn it, Bertha Sue, don't push your luck." Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the master bedroom. He thought he heard his mother's sleepy voice. "Robert, did you hear something outside?" In that instant, Leo nearly jumped out of his skin. With the fastest thumbs in human history, he hammered out a reply. "Deal. My dearest wife and master." Finally, he heard the faint sound of the girl getting out of bed inside. Light footsteps approached. The lock clicked open. Leo twisted the handle and slipped inside, quickly and silently closing the door behind him. He was so careful with the final click of the latch that he was practically holding his breath, terrified of alerting his parents next door. The door was shut. He let out a long, slow sigh of relief. Despite the cold winter night, he was drenched in sweat, feeling as if he'd just returned from the brink of death. Thinking of the culprit, his anger flared again. He looked up, ready to glare daggers at her. And in that one glance, he saw a sight so unexpectedly, visually stunning that it took his breath away. The bedroom was unlit, dim, and hazy, with only the cool, silver moonlight filtering in through the window. It fell upon the desk and the floor, coating them in a soft, gentle glow. In that ethereal light, the girl standing before him wore only a large, white t-shirt that fell just to her hips, revealing a pair of long, smooth, perfectly formed white legs. To avoid making noise, she was barefoot, her toes slender and crystalline, captivating the eye. But what truly made him hold his breath was her face, so exquisitely beautiful, framed by a cascade of jet black hair that fell over her shoulders. A few stray strands rested on her forehead, but couldn't obscure her delicate features. Bathed in moonlight, she seemed to possess an otherworldly aura, like a celestial fairy from a lunar palace, aloof and independent. Leo was completely dumbstruck. He stared at his girlfriend, forgetting he was supposed to be settling a score with Bertha Sue. Only one thought remained in his mind: to have a girlfriend like this. What more could a man ask for? Being stared at so intensely, Claire felt a blush creep up her cheeks. But then she looked up at the dumbfounded expression on his face and couldn't help but smile. An idea struck her. She silently made a gesture, pointing to her own nose. Leo snapped back to reality, sheepishly lowering his head and wiping his nose. He looked at his hand. Nothing. There was no nosebleed. Flushed with embarrassment, Leo glared at Claire. She just covered her mouth, stifling a triumphant, silent laugh. Then, she pointed to the bed and raised an eyebrow. Her silent message was clear: get in? Leo nodded without hesitation. You bet I am. He strode purposefully toward the bed. Was she kidding? This was a room he'd slept in for over a decade. This was his home turf. He wasn't afraid of some sly fox like her. However, once he was actually under the covers, everything suddenly felt different. It was the same bed he'd slept in for more than 10 years, a space more familiar than any other. But tonight, having been occupied by her first, it was filled with a faint, intoxicating fragrance. The scent seemed to carry a mysterious power that tugged at his heartstrings, weaving through the warmth of the blankets, slowly enveloping him. Leo's heart, against his will, began to beat faster. And then, to make matters worse, with a soft rustle, Claire climbed back into the other side of the bed. She lifted a corner of the covers and slipped in beside him. In that moment, they were less than a foot apart. The boy and the girl lay on their sides, facing each other on their pillows. They could almost feel the warmth radiating from each other's bodies, the gentle heat of each other's breath. Leo felt a surge of awkwardness and embarrassment. All his earlier bravado about home turf advantage had completely evaporated. The familiar bed now felt strange, its warmth tinged with a tantalizing, heart-stirring allure. The next morning, as the winter sun cast its first rays over Northwood, the Wallace family began their day. Claire emerged from the bedroom, her expression calm and composed as she walked down the hall to the guest bathroom to wash up. At the same time, Leo stretched, yawned, and rose from the living room couch. He casually folded his blankets and also headed for the bathroom. They met in the hallway. Leo, looking prim and proper, nodded in greeting. "Oh, Miss Sterling. Good morning." The girl, equally serene, gave a slight nod in return. "Mr. Wallace. Good morning." Leo, "Washing up, are we? Don't work too hard." Claire, "Likewise. You first." "No, you. Together, please." Their exchange was so polite it felt scripted, radiating a standard, positive energy sense of personal boundaries. They then entered the bathroom one after another without another change in expression. Robert and Susan, who had just come out of their bedroom, stood at their door, utterly bewildered. They looked at each other, their faces etched with confusion. What's gotten into those two? Yeah, why are they suddenly so formal? Susan eyed her husband suspiciously. "Did you say something to Leo last night?" Robert immediately proclaimed his innocence. "Of course not. All I told him was that there's no need to rush a relationship, that they should take it slow. I didn't say anything else." Susan was even more baffled. She looked toward the bathroom, where the two kids were now brushing their teeth side by side, a cloud of question marks forming above her head. They shouldn't rush. But isn't this taking it a bit too far in the other direction? They're so polite, they don't even seem like they're dating anymore. Ultimately, the older couple had no idea what had transpired the night before. For the two people involved, the calmer their surfaces appeared, the more they were trying to hide, especially their own guilt. Just like now, inside the bathroom, Leo maintained a righteous facade, focusing intently on brushing his teeth in the mirror. But out of the corner of his eye, he couldn't stop sneaking glances at his girlfriend. First her face, then his gaze slowly drifted downward. When the girl finished first and turned on the faucet to wash her hands, Leo watched her pale, soft palms and slender fingers under the running water. The memory of last night's breathtaking events sent his heart into an involuntary, accelerated rhythm. Claire noticed his gaze. She caught his strange expression in the mirror and instantly knew what he was thinking. On the surface, she remained composed, giving him a cool glance. Her lips parted. "Little pervert." Leo froze, then protested. "How am I a pervert? You were the one who—" A sharp glare from her cut him off. "Shh." Seeing that he had obediently shut up, Claire huffed softly. "You just are." She turned back to washing her hands, but the speed of her rinsing noticeably increased. From an angle he couldn't see, the tips of her ears had turned a deep shade of red. Inside her head, a miniature cartoon version of herself was rolling on the floor, trying to bury its head in a hole. Aya, this is so embarrassing. Claire Sterling, how could you have been so bold last night? After she finished, just before leaving, Claire shot him another embarrassed and annoyed look, biting her lips slightly. There won't be a next time. Leo's mind went blank, and a sense of panic set in. Don't say that. After 2 lifetimes, it was the first time the heroine had ever offered her aid. He hadn't even had a chance to properly savor the memory. How could there not be a next time? He shamelessly leaned in and whispered in her ear, I'm begging you, my dearest wife and master. In the face of truly great interests, a little dignity was a small price to pay. His instantly fawning attitude left Claire not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She gave him an exasperated look, but her heart softened. She relented, leaving a little room for negotiation. We'll see. It depends on your performance. That was all Leo needed to hear. His spirits soared, and his fighting spirit was reignited. You can count on me, ma'am. Mission accepted. During breakfast that morning, Leo's attentiveness toward his girlfriend was particularly noticeable. He was constantly putting food on her plate, then asking if her oatmeal was too hot and if he should blow on it for her. If it weren't for the murderous, mortified glare she shot him, he probably would have sat next to her and tried to feed her himself. This left Robert and Susan utterly baffled. Susan was more confused than ever. When they woke up, they were acting as formal as strangers. Now, at the table, they were being unbelievably intimate. Do kids these days have such wildly fluctuating dating styles? Robert Wallace, however, quickly caught on. He looked at his son with new understanding. Oh, you clever kid. Trying to show me up, are you? He immediately turned to his wife with a fawning expression, piling food onto her plate. Honey, you have to try this. Is it too hot? Let me blow on it for you. They had lunch at home as well. Afterwards, Leo got a call from his best friend, Kevin Zhao, suggesting their 2 couples meet up at a smoothie shop. And so, that afternoon, the 2 pairs of best friends finally got together for a proper double date after a long time apart. At the smoothie shop, Claire and Tessa went to the counter to order, while Leo and Kevin found a table. The moment he sat down, Kevin puffed out his chest, showing off his shirt. Check it out. Tessa and I went shopping yesterday and bought matching couples outfits. Kevin was wearing a gray hoodie. Over at the counter, Tessa was wearing the same style in a pale yellow. They did look quite good together, but this level of public display of affection was nothing to the current Leo. He just glanced at his friend and offered a simple, understated evaluation. Not bad. Thinking back to last night, Leo Hammer, Wallace felt a wave of superiority wash over him. Matching outfits? Child's play. I've already ascended to a whole new level. The girls brought the drinks back to the table, and the 4 of them chatted and laughed, catching up. Tessa suddenly remembered something. Hey, have you guys checked the old class group chat? A bunch of people from Class 10 are back in town, and they're talking about having a high school reunion. Leo and Claire hadn't bothered to look at the high school group chat for the past few days. But as fate would have it, as they were heading home that evening, they both received a call from their old homeroom teacher, Iron Face Harrison. At home, Leo held his phone to his ear, listening to the voice on the other end, slightly taken aback. A speech. Mr. Harrison's tone was unusually warm and cheerful. That's right, an alumni pep talk. The new senior class has their final exams in 6 months, and you and Claire were our school's valedictorian and salutatorian. Since you're both back as outstanding representatives of the alumni, you have to come back and set an example for your Northwood High juniors. Give them some encouragement. High schools often started their winter break much later than universities. While Leo, Claire, Kevin, and Tessa had already been home for a while, the students of Northwood High were still slogging through their classes, counting down the days until the semester ended. However, before the holiday they were all desperately waiting for, they got something else, a so-called outstanding alumni pep talk. At first, the new senior class at Northwood High couldn't have been less interested. They had these things every year. It was always the same routine. Go to the big lecture hall, listen to a few straight-A alumni share their study tips, get a dose of motivational fluff, and receive some generic encouragement. It was an old formula with no new tricks. They would rather spend that time catching up on sleep at their desks. But this time was different. When the names of the returning alumni were announced, even the most apathetic seniors' eyes lit up. Ooh, Leo Wallace. And Claire Sterling. Holy shit, Claire Sterling. And my man Leo the legend. One was Northwood High's most stunningly beautiful and famously aloof goddess of the past 3 years. an icon for countless classmates and underclassmen. The other had started as a relative unknown, but had skyrocketed to fame in his final semester, becoming an idol to legions of younger students. The news that these two were returning to give the speech sent shockwaves through every social circle at Northwood High. Countless students were buzzing with excitement, as if they'd been injected with pure adrenaline. Holy shit, it's the legendary power couple from last year. The unbeatable duo who vanished from the scene after graduation. The literal legends. If those two were coming back, well, then this pep talk suddenly sounded very interesting. Once the news spread, the demand for seats at the event was unprecedented. It wasn't just the seniors. Even freshmen and sophomores were clamoring to get in, desperate for a spot to witness the two Northwood High legends in person. The school administration was thrilled with the enthusiastic response. The dean of students, Dean Evans, specifically instructed the previous year's Teacher of the Year, Mr. Harrison, to ensure that two returning students were well prepared for the event. Naturally, Iron Face Harrison, having received his orders, turned around and gave Leo and Claire a thorough briefing. The next afternoon, Northwood High, in the senior faculty office, looking at his three favorite students and one other student, the man formerly known as the homeroom teacher of Class 10 was filled with a deep sense of satisfaction. Excellent, just excellent, Mr. Harrison sighed contentedly. It's only been half a year, but university has made you all grow up and mature. Leo, you're more handsome, and Tessa and Claire have both become even more beautiful. He paused, his gaze finally landing on Kevin Zhao. The veteran literature teacher, with his 30 years of experience, chose his words carefully. And Kevin is 6 months older. Kevin? Question mark. Mr. Harrison then turned back to Leo and Claire, beaming. The school and I are very touched that you still remember your alma mater after going off to college. We're counting on you two to really fire up the seniors at this afternoon's assembly. Leo and Claire smiled and politely agreed. Mr. Harrison hesitated for a moment, looking between the two of them. You two are. Now, the question was vague, but the meaning was clear. Claire smiled and, without any hesitation, took Leo's hand. Yes, she said. We are. Leo's initial reaction was a pang of guilt. After 2 lifetimes with Mr. Harrison as his homeroom teacher, the man's authority was deeply ingrained. Holding hands with his favorite student in front of him felt like tempting fate. He expected Iron Face Harrison to fly into a rage and beat him senseless. But then he remembered. What's the big deal? We're in college now. He has no jurisdiction over our dating lives. Besides, I've now been promoted to the rank of favorite student myself. He instantly relaxed, squeezing Claire's hand in his. Seeing the young couple's intimacy, Mr. Harrison wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he looked pleased. Wonderful, wonderful. I knew it back in high school. You two are a perfect match. You are meant to be together. Kevin and Tessa, standing nearby, wore strained expressions, their mouths twitching as they tried to hide their disbelief. Holy shit. Harrison, do you hear yourself? Weren't you the one who wanted to murder this guy and keep him as far away from your precious student as possible back in high school? The man's ability to change his tune was truly something else. After his effusive praise, however, Mr. Harrison paused again, choosing his words carefully. But, that being said, for today's assembly, the school's position is that you two should try to be a little more low-key. It's great that you're dating, and I'm happy for you both. But today is about motivating the seniors for their final exams. It's best to focus on sharing your study experiences. If someone in the audience asks about your relationship, it would be best not to say you're a couple. This directive had clearly come from the dean of students. Mr. Harrison looked a bit awkward as he relayed the message. But Leo and Claire exchanged a glance. They understood the school's reasoning. Dating was not officially condoned at Northwood High, even though their relationship started in college. Admitting it at the assembly would derail the entire event and defeat its purpose. Leo looked at his old teacher and smiled. Don't worry, sir. We've got it. Claire nodded. We'll just talk about study tips. Mr. Harrison breathed a sigh of relief, a grateful look on his face. Good, good. I'm sorry to put you two in this position. Before Leo or Claire could reply, Kevin jumped in, his voice ringing with righteousness. Not at all, sir. Not at all. It's our duty to help our alma mater. You can rest assured, Tessa and I will also keep our relationship a secret from the underclassmen. He thumped his chest with a resounding thwack, a picture of solemn dedication. Never mind the small commotion erupting in the audience, where a certain student named Zhao was now indignantly yelling. You're the sidekick. Your whole family are sidekicks," before being swiftly dragged away by his apologizing girlfriend. On stage, as Leo and Claire took their seats, another wave of thunderous applause and cheers broke out. All eyes were on them. The assembly officially began. Seated on stage with Leo and Claire were their former homeroom teacher, Iron Face Harrison, and the school's dean of students, Dean Evans. First, Dean Evans delivered a smiling opening speech. Then he announced, "And now, I'd like to welcome two outstanding representatives from last year's graduating class to share their experiences on preparing for the final semester exams." Leo and Claire took their microphones. They were more than happy to cooperate. Facing the crowd of underclassmen, they both seriously began to detail their study methods. For Leo, in particular, this was familiar territory. With years of tutoring experience from his past life, his ability to coach students was possibly even better than that of some of the teachers present. He spoke about exam preparation with an easy confidence, his insights sharp and to the point. Many of the students who had come just to see their idols found themselves captivated, subconsciously taking out notebooks and jotting down notes. Beside them, Dean Evans and Mr. Harrison couldn't stop smiling in satisfaction. They looked at Leo with growing admiration. This kid is really something. Claire had already finished her part. Now, she sat watching Leo speak to the audience, his voice calm and confident. She slowly turned, resting her chin on her hand, and watched him, unblinking. The more she looked, the more she liked what she saw. A guy who's focused is really attractive. He's handsome and charming. Oh no, I kind of want to kiss him. She became so engrossed that she began to unconsciously lean closer and closer to him as he spoke. The students in the front rows, who had also been listening intently, noticed the shift in their goddess's posture. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Dean Evans and Mr. Harrison also saw what was happening and began coughing loudly, trying to catch her eye. Ahem, ahem, ahem. The sound snapped Claire back to reality. She suddenly realized she had almost lost her composure in such a public setting. Her Ice Queen persona was on the verge of shattering. Fortunately, Claire's reflexes were lightning fast. She was already about to press up against him. With the poise of a former CEO of a publicly traded company, she reacted instantly. Instead of awkwardly pulling back, she continued her forward motion and, without hesitation, swung her hand up. Smack! A crisp, solid slap landed squarely on Leo's forehead. The sound, amplified by the microphone, echoed clearly throughout the entire lecture hall. The students were stunned. Kevin and Tessa were stunned, and the victim on stage was so stunned his brain hadn't even processed what had happened. He looked at his girlfriend, utterly baffled. Claire had already returned to her seat, her expression once again cool and composed. "There was a mosquito," she said calmly. "I was helping you." The entire hall was silent as the students processed this. Then, a wave of understanding washed over them. Of course, no wonder she was their idol. Not only was she beautiful and brilliant, but her reflexes were incredible. That was some expert-level mosquito swatting. It made perfect sense. The audience erupted in a wave of admiring and thunderous applause. On the stage, Mr. Harrison quickly recovered and played along, his voice full of conviction. Yes, back in high school, Claire and Leo were desk mates. She often helped him swat mosquitoes during evening study hall. As their homeroom teacher, I can vouch for this. Dean Evans nodded sagely, taking the opportunity to elevate the moment. Excellent, excellent. You see, everyone, this is the kind of friendship and teamwork our outstanding alumni share. In their studies, they supported each other. In life, they helped each other. It may seem like Claire only slapped a mosquito, but this was no ordinary mosquito. It represents the obstacles and distractions that once tried to interfere with Leo's studies. From now on, we at Northwood High must cultivate this mosquito swatting custom. We must establish this slap the mosquito spirit. Every student is a comrade in arms, watching each other's backs. Any mosquito that threatens to disrupt your studies, we will fight it resolutely and show no mercy. His voice was passionate and powerful. As Dean Evans raised a fist in the air, the lecture hall exploded in another round of ridiculously enthusiastic applause. This is so damn ridiculous. Kevin and Tessa were dumbfounded. Holy shit, honey, she can even spin it like that. That's a dean for you. A true professional. Even Claire was slightly moved, looking at Dean Evans with a newfound appreciation. This is top-tier professional talent. Sterling Holdings needs a man like this. A harmonious and enthusiastic atmosphere filled the lecture hall. The only person still in a daze was the handsome young man with a red mark on his forehead. After Leo and Claire had both shared their experiences, the assembly moved on to the next phase, the Q&A session. The power finally shifted to the students. A forest of hands shot up. A girl in the front row got the first chance. She took the microphone, her face flushed with excitement, and asked the question on everyone's mind. Leo, Claire, last year, both of your final exam scores were easily high enough for Harvard or Yale. Why did you both choose to go to Berkeley? The question voiced the curiosity of nearly everyone in the room. All eyes turned to the stage, burning with the flames of gossip. Leo took the microphone and smiled. It was nothing, really. We just happened to think alike. Deskmate telepathy. Beside him, Claire also picked up her mic, her tone calm and collected. It was just a coincidence. A Northwood student at Berkeley. For safety reasons, it's best to keep a low profile. Leo spoke those words from the bottom of his heart, a gentle warning offered out of kindness. But the two middle-aged men on stage with him were completely oblivious, unable to grasp his good intentions. Hearing Leo's words, Dean Evans just laughed heartily again. "Aw, Leo, you're a great kid, but you're just too modest. With two outstanding alumni, like you paving the way at Berkeley, you've already established a golden reputation for Northwood High. Why should our future students have to be low-key? No, they must announce their origins. Everyone, study hard. And for those of you who get into Berkeley, I'll have the school custom make an honorary Northwood High pin for you. When the time comes, wear that pin and report to Berkeley with your heads held high." With another grand wave of his hand, the dean's voice boomed with passion. Mr. Harrison applauded enthusiastically. "Excellent. You see, everyone, this is the kind of unconditional support your alma mater is willing to give you." The students below erupted in a frenzy of cheers. Berkeley, Berkeley, announcer from Northwood at Berkeley, and we're a Northwood High pin to orientation. Even the worldly Tessa couldn't help but gasp, a chill running down her spine. This seems like it could cause a major problem, right? Kevin was already desperately trying to reason with the frenzied students around him, on the verge of tears. "Don't do it, kids. You'll die." The situation was getting out of control. Leo and Claire couldn't exactly explain the real reason publicly, so they could only exchange a look and offer a silent prayer for the future Northwood students aiming for Berkeley. When Dean Evans warmly invited Leo to say a few more words about Berkeley, he thought for a long moment. He could only manage a few vague, composed phrases like, "Berkeley has a very scenic grove of trees, and it's a very trendy place, and the students are all very welcoming and friendly." Beside him, the girl nonchalantly added, "And there's a pretty nice motel near campus." She was putting in a good word for Mr. Chien, a strong contender for the best man at their future wedding. He deserved it. Once the commotion died down a little, another student stood up with a microphone. "So, are you two dating or not?" Finally, a brave soul, unable to contain their burning curiosity, had asked the question everyone was dying to know. Countless pairs of eyes, filled with a thirst for knowledge, turned to the stage. Dean Evans and Mr. Harrison started coughing violently, trying to send a signal. Leo and Claire looked at each other. Leo took the microphone, his voice righteous. "Rumors. They're all rumors. We're just very pure, platonic high school desk mates. Just good friends." The crowd erupted in a commotion. Another student couldn't help but shout, "But we heard you two used to hold hands on the way to the cafeteria. You walked to and from school together, and you even studied together in the lecture hall every day for the last month before finals." The accusation was met with a chorus of vigorous nods from the other students. This time, Claire took the microphone, a faint smile on her lips. "It's perfectly normal for close friends and desk mates to be a bit more intimate. Everything you mentioned, it was just coincidence and entirely reasonable." She intended to brush off the potentially explosive topic with a simple explanation. The students started murmuring among themselves, seemingly starting to accept their story. But then, a clueless senior boy stood up, looked at Leo, and asked with an eager expression, "In that case, Leo, if I wanted to pursue Claire, you wouldn't have a problem with that, would you?" On stage, Leo's expression froze for a second, but the soul of a man in his 30s quickly took over, and he smiled magnanimously. "Of course not." He even offered some friendly advice. "To win her over, you'll definitely have to get into Berkeley. And when you show up for orientation, make sure you wear your Northwood High pin." The students below were filled with respect. They hadn't expected Leo to be so generous. A wave of applause followed. The senior boy sat down, his face glowing with gratitude. Immediately after, another girl stood up with a microphone, looking shyly but expectantly at them. "Then, Claire, when I get into Berkeley, can I pursue Leo?" This time, it was the girl's smile that froze. It was quickly replaced by a gentle, warm expression that could melt glaciers. Of course you can. When you get to the city, you won't know anyone. As your senior, I can arrange for a special driver to pick you up. He can, help you and take care of a few things for you. The crowd sighed in admiration. As expected of our goddess, she's so kind and gentle. The girl who asked the question sat down, beaming with joy. Meanwhile, in a corner of the audience, Tessa and Kevin. Some people are technically alive, but they're already dead. These kids are so brave. The assembly ended on a high note, a resounding success. The long-term effects were hard to judge, but at least no immediate casualties were expected. Leo, his conscience nagging him, wanted to have another word with Dean Evans after the assembly, a final act of charity to try and save the lives of the future Berkeley hopefuls. But just as he was about to speak, the dean cut him off with a hearty laugh. "Ah, Leo, you're just too modest. When I said you two were Northwood's golden ticket at Berkeley, I wasn't exaggerating one bit. I'm the dean of students. Do you think I wouldn't stand by my own words? News of your triumphs at Berkeley has already reached your alma mater." Leo and Claire exchange a look. Miniature question marks popped up over both of their heads. Dean Evans' face was glowing. Just a little while ago, the school was getting calls constantly. They were from your fellow Berkeley students, specifically calling to ask if you two had graduated from our school. Dean Evans was in high spirits, eager to chat with the two outstanding alumni. If Leo and Claire hadn't politely excused themselves, citing their high school reunion that evening, the dean of students probably would have insisted they join him for dinner in the school cafeteria. Though he accepted their refusal, the dean still enthusiastically walked them to the door. As they left the office, he offered a final, heartfelt piece of encouragement. "You two must continue to shine at Berkeley and be a beacon for Northwood High. Strive to become the bridge between your university and your alma mater. Who knows, maybe one day our two schools can form an official partnership." A partnership is unlikely. Burning bridges, on the other hand, is a certainty. Leo felt a complex mix of emotions. He looked at the dean, whose face was